Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our August 17th Planning Commission meeting for the City of Murfreesboro. We'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum present. Our first item of business will be to approve the minutes of the July 20th, 2022 and August 3rd, 2022 Planning Commission meetings. Did everybody have a chance to review those and have any additions, corrections?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next, we'll have our consent agenda. I'm going to go ahead and mention real quickly, we do have our quorum present, but lacking the one empty seat on the end down there where Mr. Rick LaLance would normally be sitting. He has chosen, since this would have been his last meeting, he's just not here today. He's busy. So I got on to him for not allowing me to be able to publicly thank him for his time on the Planning Commission. As y'all know, we went back and forth a little bit here and there, but I absolutely loved having him on the Planning Commission. I think he was a great help to us. He certainly digs into all the numbers, as we all know. He sees a lot of things and has a lot of ideas and things that he brings up that we may not have thought about otherwise. Don't always agree with them, but we like to hear everything. That's what it's all about, you know, and I think it certainly gave us some great conversation here on the Planning Commission. So we'll miss having him up here. We congratulate Miss Jamie, newest member of the council up here, so congratulations, and we're happy to have that. So now Sean and Jamie here as our council members for this meeting at least. Well, it's not official yet, is it? Sorry.
Have 2 more
September 1st. September 1st, yes. But consent agenda just makes me think of, because Rick was the one that said, you know, do we have to read this consent agenda every time? You know, I've only been doing it I don't know how long, and I was so happy to know I didn't have to read this every single time. So we have had the opportunity to review the consent agenda. Again, are there any items on here that anybody wanted to have removed for further discussion?
There are none. I'll move for approval on the consent agenda.
Motions and seconds. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, old business. We have one item of old business to discuss today. This is a zoning application for approximately 1.5 acres located at 915 Haynes Drive to be rezoned from RS-15 to PRD. Blue Sky Construction is the applicant. Ms. Green, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Our item of old business is for you to consider a rezoning application that was made to the Planning Commission to consider rezoning property from single-family residential district, RS-15, to PRD, Planned Residential District. And the project has been named Beaumont, and I think there are various forms that we pronounce that, depending on who you ask, but that's the pronunciation I'm sticking with today. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing June 1st on this item and discussed the elements shown in the Plan Development Program Book. In that program book, there were, of course, layouts and a concept plan, which I have on the screen before you. This is the version that was approved by Planning Commission. Discussion at that meeting resulted in the application being deferred. I believe that was at the request of the applicant. So they had an ability to work on some of the elements that were brought up. Most notable was the ability of a fire truck to circulate the site. And so since that June 1st meeting until today, we have worked with the staff to discuss design options that would allow a fire truck to completely circulate the site. As you may recall, a private hauler serves this facility, so with these being private streets or private drives, the city's fire truck would not be going through here, the city's garbage truck, but we would anticipate that the closest available fire engine might respond based on whatever needs they have, whether it's a fire emergency or a medical emergency. After the meeting, staff planning department grouped together and we discussed the options available and recommended to the applicants that they revise the concept plan so that it has 2 drives onto Haynes Drive, one closest to the property lines. that would allow a fire truck to completely circulate the site without the ability or the need to maybe stop and back up or turn, or without hitting any curbs or any cars that may project beyond that 19-foot parking island. The applicants preferred to not take that suggestion from Planning Department and have asked to come to you today for you to consider this proposed version of the plan. This plan, of course, maintains the one entrance in the center. It does include, I think, 3 changes. First of all, the guest parking is moved closer to the property lines. Here's the proposed version. You can see that I tried to identify what the changes were. In one area, it went from 7 feet to 5 feet, and the other, it went from 14 feet to 5 feet. So they pushed those closer to the property line, which then means that there's 5 feet between the parking and the adjacent properties, and we discussed a desire to make sure the design didn't have negative impacts on the neighbors when people were parking here, particularly headlights. And so their solution, since now landscaping isn't available in this area because it's too small to have any meaningful landscaping that would be able to screen the area, they're proposing to put fences, but put the parking much closer. Also, the responses to the book said that the open space was increased, but we do have software where we overlaid the open space on top of each other. And if you look at the concept plans, it is not the same dimensions. I'm not sure where the numbers came from or how they came up with an idea that it was larger, but based on the information we have, it doesn't look like it is larger. It looks like it's a little bit smaller. So the decrease in setback from the parking and the decrease in the space in the center are what we've noticed being the changes for this development. I do recall that there were some discussions requesting some kind of restriction placed on rental of the units for the first so many years. I didn't see that in the book. I don't know if it's still their intention or not to implement that, but I do recall it being a discussion that you may want to bring up. So this plan, although there were some revisions made, it's not quite what Planning Commission or Planning Department recommended based on what we heard from Planning Commission that a truck be able to circulate the site. The applicants, of course, are here and they have a presentation that they'd like to present to you, and staff is available if you have any questions, either before or after your deliberation on the matter. I'll pull up their PowerPoint for them. There you go.
Thank you, Margaret Ann. Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree at Huddleston Steel Engineering. I'm here representing Mr. Howard Wilson and Mr. Brian Burns in regards to Blue Sky Construction. And I want to just walk you through, I can walk you through the whole presentation. I'll just do that since it's been a while, be quick about it, but also walk you through the changes and how we try to respond to some of the concerns that have been brought up through the course of the project. Oh, full screen, where are we at? All right. So as was mentioned by Margaret Ann, this is basically a kind of an infill project over off of Haynes Drive. Most of you are familiar with the site. We drove by it today. So it's almost a 1.5 acre site. There's a lot of existing mature trees there, which we're going to do our best to try to preserve some of those trees. It all fronts Haynes Drive, right across from Jameson's Place, and kind of tucks around the corner. There's an existing house to the west, a smaller home that they came to our neighborhood meeting. There's also an existing house to the east, a larger home, kind of a more of a kind of a craftsman style, beautiful yellow home, and it's really, really nice. Both owners were favorable at our neighborhood meeting in terms of our project. The one on the yellow has the yellow home on the eastern side's done some work. They've got an in-law situation that they're actually working with, so they've been doing some remodeling on that home. And the fellow on the west, talked to Mr. Burns about possibly selling this house for this project. So they were fairly receptive to what we were planning on doing. As is mentioned, the lots are deep here. That's why it's been attractive for development purposes. There's not traditional shallow lots. They're very deep lots, which we're seeing with a lot of infill. It gives you the option to do kind of a two-layered kind of approach to development. A lot of existing photos, we won't go through those in detail. As far as the overall site plan is concerned, as Margaret had mentioned, several of the concerns were really related around the fire protection, making sure that a fire truck can circulate within the site. Mr. Burns sat down with Carl Pease and walked through that. I spoke to Carl Pease today to make sure that he was confident that we're okay. I did learn something about fire protection. We did our template based on a 40-foot truck, because our template only has a 40-foot truck. The truck that would actually service this area, if it was launched from the firehouse, is a 37-foot truck. So our template's actually a little bit more conservative than it had to be. However, I did talk to Carl about this. He said, but that's not always the way it works. Sometimes a larger truck will be dispatched because it's the closest truck. So we walked through that scenario as well. So he said in that scenario, he would say he'd perform more what we call basically a hammerhead maneuver. He'd drive into the site, back in and back out and pull out the same way he came in. So the option's available. We have it designed so a truck can circulate within the site. However, if there is a situation where a larger truck comes, he still feels like we can hammerhead through the site as well. So we wanted to make sure, because that was a primary health, safety, and welfare concern. We know that's a major concern for Planning Commission. So, and as the designers too, we feel the same way. What has happened as far as that central space, that grass area, there is a fire pit area, there's a pavilion there, and really it's not pavilion, more like an arbor structure. That's been the point of movement. We've had it enlarged, we've had it decreased. So our latest design really has reduced it somewhat in size. However, it expanded the driveway area. That allows for that truck to have absolutely no issues with any sort of circulation. If we need to make it larger, we still can. The truck still works, but we were a little conservative on the central island to make sure there wasn't any chance that the wheels from the truck are going to roll over the curb or that there's any kind of issue. So we just wanted to know that's been the kind of the point of movement. And as Margaret had mentioned, we're going to go with opaque walls wherever the guest parking is. It looks right into the neighbor's potential property. So we're going to go with an opaque 6-foot privacy wall and that portion. So the landscaping will stop there. We can still put shrubberies. We have 5 feet, as Margaret had mentioned, so we can put something lower, but we won't have the ability to put something taller just because of that, because we really need that opaque wall. As far as the style of the homes, these are the homes, both the House 1 and House 2 are what you'll see from Haynes Drive. So that's the presentation. There'll be 4 of them along the frontage. They're going to have a New Orleans style character, and basically from a house standpoint, what that means is one of them has a double porch, one has a single porch, one has more shutters, one has less shutters, but they all have accentuated sized windows, larger windows, decorative columns, exposed rafter tails, whether it's on the upper level, lower level, period style lighting, decorative rails, lap siding. They're all masonry. The ones on the front are all rear loaded. Mr. Burns has done several projects where we've done this, where the front are rear loaded, the rear are actually front loaded garages. They all have 2-car garages with additional 2-car parking outside. So we've met the parking required. We're over parked by about 6 spaces. That's our guest parking spaces. So we've met the parking requirements. We feel like aesthetically it's a real enhancement to the neighborhood from a design standpoint. It'll have that signature that I think Brian's become known for, just as far as quality, and Howard's been known for that as well. And then, lastly, we just want to make sure that, as far as the neighbors are concerned, we do want to have an evergreen kind of hedgerow around the property. I mean, they're going to be trees, but it's going to be solid, because we know that there are neighbors adjacent. Again, the one on the left is the yellow home. They are on a larger lot, so they're not quite as close to our property line. The one on the right's a little bit closer, but we want to make sure there's a solid green wall, that's what they're going to see when they look on this property. So that's the intention over time, is that it's basically the same as a type A buffer, a solid green wall along the property lines. So those are the things we've addressed in the process. I'm available for any kind of questions you may have. Howard and Brian are here as well. But we thank you for the opportunity to present to you again before you. And again, the primary driving force, I think we're in favor of the project for the most part. It was just whether that fire truck access could really work. And I'm glad to know we have 2 different options based on whatever truck shows up to the site. So with that, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Roundtree. So comments and questions from the Planning Commission. What are your thoughts on the changes?
Yeah, when doing your measurements on the fire truck getting through, did you all measure with vehicles being in those spots? Because that would tighten that turning radius. So I'm curious on that.
We didn't, the simulation doesn't have trucks in those parking spaces. I think by widening, where we did widen it, where we made the center island area smaller, that would be where the guest parking is. Those would potentially protrude out. The primary concern with that concern is when the truck is on like a turning radius. That's the primary place where that would be an issue. So we did widen those drive lanes where that potentially could be an issue.
Okay.
And that's why that island's gotten smaller.
I will comment that I do feel like, I think our main discussion revolved around the circulation for a fire truck. I think I was expecting to possibly see maybe fewer units to allow for more room to get around on the site while still allowing for some more green space and additional visitor parking, and just not having the entire site be basically crammed full every inch. So I'm a little disappointed in the changes I might have been expecting to see.
I'll make a comment based off a council discussion in last month's workshop. Last month's workshop, we had another project come through that was an HBR that was single-family detached, just like this, but they're basically townhomes. They were basically townhomes that were just detached, just like these. And council discussed that we don't really have the desire to go HBR, single-family detached, just for the sake of density. So if we're going to have single-family detached to increase density, I think Rick brought it up last council meeting, have a yard for kids to play in, not just common area. You don't want to have to go grab a beer and then you can go sit in your neighbor's patio because it's really common area. And just density for the sake of density. And you think about the tail whip effect of this project. If we approve this, think about all the big tracks going up and down Haynes. You allow it once and you allow it multiple times all the way up and down that road, and it just doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood.
I think as far as density, we're at 5.5 units per acre. It's a pretty decent sized site as far as overall. I think it'd have a little bit more of the appearance of higher density than it actually would feel. As far as the homes themselves, the designer built that into the mix. The ones on the front have covered front porches. All of the units, if you look at the floor plans, have internal courtyard kind of patios. So there's a patio on basically intermittent inside the buildings themselves. The ones on the rear have a backyard as well. So there's, as far as the quality of life space, there's ample room within these homes for outdoor living. I think that's part of the design. And as far as, where the development community is, we know that this is the direction we want to go in as a city as far as having, detached homes. That will probably innately increase the density, just because to have homes at this price point, land is going to be a premium to have in addition. So we feel like we're in the right direction by going with the single-family detached. I think that's always been the intention. We feel like that for sure is merited within the neighborhood. And we know there's been a history in this area where multifamily tried to come in, and there was quite a bit of resistance. So, we feel like we're in that direction, because my concern is, single-family detached has a lot of different definitions, and usually it's how much land's associated with it, because there's the idea of having the yard and having the big yard, those kind of things. I think those days are unfortunately kind of behind us. So I think the fact that we provide some sort of open space within the property, and outdoor and indoor living within the properties themselves, I think we're doing our best to try to make sure that, we don't want to sell a house that's not a quality house to live in, and we know the homes that will be built will be quality homes.
One comment I wanted to make on this project is it's not a whole lot different than the...
Mr. Burns, good afternoon.
I'm sorry.
State your name and address. Thank
I just
you.
assumed everybody knew me. I'm sorry. Brian Burns with BA Homes and Blue Sky Construction. This neighborhood and these homes are very similar to what's at Stratford Hall. This is very similar, and I don't remember the name of the neighborhood across the street, but it's been there since the 80s. It's a gated neighborhood. What's it called? Not Jameson Place, but it's got the same setbacks on homes that what we built at General's Landing. You got 10 foot between each home. I think a lot of the people thought we're only building houses with 5-foot setbacks. We're going to be 10 foot apart on the houses, not 5. It's the same thing as every new neighborhood on Thompson Lane from Carolina Farms down to Tuscany. They all have the same setbacks. I think people think this is a lot more dense than it is. We've tried to copy other neighborhoods that were successful when coming up with this plan. So I think it'll be a quality neighborhood. I think it'll be one of the nicest neighborhoods on the street when we're done with it. That's always our goal anyway.
I would just think those other neighborhoods have a lot more access in and out. There's, more than one entrance. It's not everybody circulating on one lot, basically, or 2 lots in this case. If you're looking at anything over there around Jameson Place or Carolina Farms, of course, Carolina Farms we know is a straight shot, but
And with 8 homes, I would think one entrance would be plenty on this. We've got 6 townhomes on Vine Street that everybody just loved that project, and we got 1 entrance in. There's almost no way to put 2 entrances in on something with 8 homes and make it where it looks like it's not a thing of concrete. These projects, these small infill projects, all come down to being very detailed with your designs, putting real working shutters on them and gas lights and things of that nature, and the landscaping. You got to landscape them to the hilt. I think a lot of people has thought that these were going to be just then I'm trying to build townhomes and put 5 foot between them. They're 5-foot setbacks, which gives you 10 foot between each house, and that's pretty much the standard almost for every new home being built now. I don't know hardly any neighborhoods that have more than 5-foot setbacks being built that's not huge lots. So I know there was some rumors going around I was only building 5 foot apart, but that's not the case. There's 10-foot setbacks just like every other neighborhood in the area.
I was hoping like maybe even the single entry, but with 2 homes on either side of the, 2 nice homes on either side, and maybe 3 on the back. Give you a lot more room and make it a lot nicer project. And
this neighborhood is going to be designed for people who just don't want to live in a townhome but still want a little bit of a yard, and there's a huge demand for that. Most of General's Landing, the people that bought from General's Landing, and I'm across from one of the best schools in the county and the state, and I bet there isn't 20 kids that live in that neighborhood. It's all people, I'm 54 this year, so it's all people my age and older moving over there. And that's what you get a lot of this is. You get a lot of single households now, or kids are moved out. They don't want to live in Regency Park with a big yard, or they don't want to live in Oakley with a big yard anymore. And that still gives them a very nice high-end house. They travel. People that buy these type homes, they travel a lot. They're here 4 or 5, 6 months a year. That's sort of been the clientele that buys this type of product from us. And once again, I think we have a reputation of what we build. We always do what we say, and we make it nice. And this project won't be any different. It'll be a project you'll drive by one day, and if you pass it, it'll be something you'll be glad you passed, I think. Sometimes it's always hard to put on paper how nice we want to make something. And I know everybody gets up here and says they're going to build something nice. I don't think nobody comes up and says they're building anything not nice. So, but we've had a pretty good track record of that. I don't feel that I've ever, or Howard and I, either one have ever had a project that would embarrass the council or the planning commission when we're done with it. That's our goal is for 10 years from now for it to look as nice as it did when we started. And that's one of the reasons I like doing the HPRs. I've got another neighborhood on Thompson Lane that hasn't got to this point yet. We was mulling back and forth whether to do 0 lot lines or HPRs. HPRs, you can bring one landscaper in. They keep everything landscaped. The site looks nicer as an HPR. And that's the reason I personally like doing HPRs. they're easier to manage and control, and you don't have to worry about that one guy not mowing his yard.
Yeah, I certainly don't argue with that at all. And you have done some extremely nice projects that we're very proud of, so I'm not arguing any of that. Just want this one to be really nice, too.
I wouldn't do it if it wasn't. Thank you, guys.
What other comments or questions?
I'll chime in here. I think that my concern was the fire truck when Rick brought it up the last time, because I was for the project. I'm sure I can be proven wrong, but I just don't feel like that at this price point and the look of the houses, these are going to turn into rentals. I'm not saying that they can't, but I'm not sure that they would. My daughter lives in the neighborhood. It has 10 feet between each house, and they're very close, but that's what she wanted, and she didn't want to have to fool with the yard, even though she fools with what yard she's got. I understand that we may not want the infill along the way on Haynes Drive, but I think this is a good project, so I'm going to be in favor of it.
Well, I think from my standpoint, the biggest thing was trying to figure out the fire trucks. I'm still kind of scratching my head on the fire trucks getting around this radius. But if you're saying that,
We'd asked them to show the truck turn simulation, and Benny said he would do it, and so I put it on the computer for you to do it. So if you want to go ahead and come up. There.
Okay, this is pretty exciting.
It's like something out of the 80s.
Yeah, it's a game.
okay, so it's not touching parkings.
So that's a 40-foot truck, and what would be dispatched would be a 37-foot truck.
So what do the X's represent? Anything?
People.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm going to talk to Huddleston Steel's guys and see if we can get a better program, because everyone wanted to simulate every movement. It just basically every time there's a turn point, it turns X.
I see.
Yeah, so it's not a beautiful simulation.
And what?
Did you see that, Warren? Is that enough? Was that? You want to see it again?
Yeah, run it one more time.
Run that
Okay.
again. And I'm just thinking, did you all decide, are you doing private garbage pickups?
hauler.
So the trucks that are going through for that are smaller, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll say something about private pickup too, again, from the council side. We get calls every single day recently from neighborhoods with private pickup that are begging for the city to start picking up their trash.
I feel the opposite.
Okay, just in general, if the city were picking up this trash, can the truck, that truck is substantially smaller than a fire truck, that's right? That's not an issue.
Okay, I'll run it again. Hopefully it'll be the same thing.
The solid waste director has policies that are established whether they can or cannot serve it. This project cannot be served by city solid waste vehicles based on the policy that they've adopted. And most of it has to do with the radius, the turning radius, the way the trucks move. I don't pretend to understand it. I asked Ms. Knoll to look at the simulation because to me, I just see a rectangle move it around. And so I don't understand the numbers, but we asked engineering to look at that. But no, our city policy would not let us pick up garbage here. Now, I don't know if they wanted to line them up along Haynes Drive. You probably wouldn't want a scenario like that where you have 8 garbage cans along the a collector or arterial street. Well, I'm not sure which one it is.
And the reason is the city has a policy on that is they don't go down private roads. I had General's Landing, the policy changed on it because it was all public streets with driveways like normal homes. And they agreed to pick trash up on those townhomes or those, but when you're dealing with private neighborhoods, they won't go in the roads. It has nothing to do with the fire truck or the garbage truck not making the turns. Garbage truck is probably 10 foot shorter than a fire truck. But the private haul has worked really good in the neighborhoods we're doing. Even on Hidden River with 600 homes, we're going to do private haul there. And the reason we do that is so you don't have to have a dumpster. I used to get more complaints over the dumpster smelling bad or people throwing trash in. And private haul eliminates the dumpster. That's why we, on our projects, do private haul. And it's pretty affordable. It's $19 a month per house.
And can I ask you then on the, I would just think on a smaller development, and you, like, I guess your Vine Street, you said, is it 7? Did that end up being 7?
It was 6 units, ma'am.
6 units.
It was a lot smaller
So
property.
can you keep the common area, I guess the HOA that has to pay for all that? Is there any issue or problem when you only have 6 individuals participating, keeping that up? And, you know, if you even have one person that decides they're not going to pay it anymore and whatever, that's, you know, when you got 600, you know, you're going to be able to take care of that. But if you have 200 in General's Landing, I mean, you're going to be able to take care of that. But the smaller you get, is that an issue with your HOAs?
I haven't ran into the problems, but I see where you were going with it, though. It could be you get 6 people and 3 people decide they're not going to pay, you just lost half your money.
Yeah.
But it's no different than a big neighborhood. The HOA has to go after the people and make them pay. And that's, I mean, I've not had a problem with any of our projects as far as the HOAs running. And I do a lot of small ones. We did Clark Boulevard with 10 units. And then we did Vine Street with 6 units. And then we got Bilbro, which is going to be 18 units. But the dumpster costs like $300 a month to have it picked up. So when you take $19 a month for the houses, it's really almost a push, and I think you get better service. The company we used pulls right up to the driveway. They take the can out. They put it in a small trailer that they pull behind the truck. So there's really no big trucks coming in for garbage on these. It's all smaller vehicles. And in my personal opinion, it works better than the dumpster. No matter what you do, it has to be a private haul. It just depends if it's the garbage cans or the dumpsters.
Okay.
Sorry, but that information's not correct. We do serve private streets. They need to be designed to city street standards, and the biggest element is that radius. I'm sorry you didn't know that, but we do. Our policy does let private streets be serviced. I just wanted to make sure you understood that.
You can serve a private street as long as it meets the radius and...
Right. This meets city standards, and the hardest thing typically is if you have alleys or smaller lots and you make them tight, they can't make the radius. But absolutely, we do serve them, and that's a change. Years ago, maybe back 15 years ago, it was different, but we do serve them now.
Okay.
For Mr. Russell's visual, one more time here.
There we go.
We'll add music next time for sure.
And this is the 40-foot truck, is that correct?
I'm sorry, this is the 40-foot truck, yes.
This is the 40-foot truck.
Mr. Jones.
Well, he's using every bit of it.
And as was mentioned, I'll just show you what would happen if it were perchance a larger truck was dispatched. Carl said he would come in, he would stage for the fighting the fire, then they would literally pull in, pull back, and then pull out. So that first drive out would suffice for the hammerhead if necessary. But this is the truck that is designed to be dispatched for that location.
In the case of a fire, we don't just send one fire truck, though. We send 2 to 4. So what would happen if a big truck came in first, have another truck sitting on Haynes?
Just right, I'm not really positive about that. I'm not sure how they stage that.
I would imagine that's any neighborhood, they're going to all be sitting out on the street, you know.
Mr. Wright, just from clarity, I did ask Howard about this, that I didn't really realize, but I think typically they stay within 150 feet of the house because they don't want the trucks too close to the fire to begin with. So primarily the motion we're seeing is probably once the fire is over, they're heading out of the site. So in theory, let's just say there was a two-fire fight, they would probably bring two trucks in potentially, one would go right, one would go left, and they'd fight the fire potentially.
Okay, thank you.
So you're saying the hammerhead, they can actually make that, with a 40-foot truck, they can make the turn on the first turn?
Yes, sir. Yeah, well, what they're saying is that there's a chance, they have a 46-foot truck, to my understanding, that he had a term for it, but if a truck is closer, that truck could be dispatched just because it's closer. So I just wanted to make sure if the chance a larger truck was dispatched to this site, that there's a way he can get out of there. And he said he could hammerhead out. He gave the specifications: 28-foot radius, 20-foot wide drive lane, 150-foot clear between the drive lanes. So we hit those specs.
Okay.
Other comments? Questions? Thoughts?
Well, if there are none, we'll see where this goes. I'm going to make a motion that we approve per this submission.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
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 No.
Abstain.
Aye.
Aye.
I was yes.
So we were 4 ayes, 1 no, 1 abstention. Got it? All right. Move on to the next level. Looking forward to the nicest project ever on Haynes Drive. I know you will.
We had 2 people from the public hearing, or the public meeting, both of them wanted to buy houses.
Good deal. All right, moving on, under item 6, our GDO, we have several items here. Our first one is the Ascension St. Thomas parking garage, initial design review of a 300,000 square foot parking structure on 68.5 acres, zoned light industrial, GDO, and PSO, located along Medical Center Parkway. Middle Tennessee Medical Center, Inc. is the developer. Ms. Green.
Thank you. Mr. Roundtree poisoned my laptop. No.
Dang, Margaret.
There it is. Okay, all right. Now, I am excited to present to you this next item because I think it's something we've all been waiting for quite some time. There it is. Okay. Ascension St. Thomas is coming to you today with the first item of Gateway Design Overlay initial design review for a parking garage. I know when the hospital first presented their plan to us, it was a part of the long-range plan. Signalization was one component of it, and parking garage. There we go. And so today we have before you an item for initial design review for you to consider the architecture for a parking structure located in the GDO. It also is zoned PSO, Planned Signage Overlay, and Light Industrial District. The garage itself is approximately 300,000 square feet, and of course it's got 1,000 parking spaces in it and several stories. The parking structure itself will displace 194 parking spaces. So on the screen you see an ortho photo, and site is pointing to an area of existing parking. That existing parking will become the parking garage. This location is closer to some of the MOBs, the medical office buildings, and some of the treatment facilities here. The representatives for St. Thomas have stated that this parking will be for their staff, employees, doctors, or folks working at the hospital, so it will not be open to the general public, and that is something that's in their response. The zoning wouldn't restrict it either way, so if they change their plan in the future, that may be something that happens, but I did want to share with you because we were wanting to ask about the parking here. We're all aware of the fact that there's, in some areas, doesn't seem to be enough parking. The hospital offers valet because of that, and other types of ways to kind of mitigate the parking scenario. This ortho photo, you can see cars parked along the northernmost drive, private drive. That's a temporary measure that was approved by our administrative department because there is deficient parking. Even though they meet and exceed our parking standards, the site itself really needs more parking. So that's why we're excited to present an opportunity for a garage on this site. The project has been to the DRC for initial design review, and we did get feedback from them. They really didn't have many comments at all, and I couldn't find any that related to the architecture. And so, but I did ask for them to make sure to include the responses. Generally, I pass around the materials board so that you can see, feel it, because it really gives you a good demonstration of texture. The boards are on the table in front of me. They're very heavy, very, very heavy, and I will give them to you if you want them. Okay. Otherwise, they're here, and I probably should have the team pass it around so that you can see it. But those present the colors and the textures that they're proposing here. One of the most significant elements is that this fit in with the character of the existing facility, the hospital. The hospital's in a bit of a transition. The roof line changed a little bit with some of the additions to the top of the existing structures, going from more traditional to slightly more modern, but not too modern. And so this reflects the hospital's design. They have confirmed with me in writing that the bricks they're choosing match the bricks on the existing hospital. And so those are there for you to review. At this time, I'd like to invite the design team to the lectern to talk about the specifics of the design. The GDO has 4 criteria for parking structures. They are that the exterior design shall be architecturally harmonious with the development. Screening at the perimeter of the deck shall be provided at grade level so that vehicles are screened. Ramps leading into the parking garage shall be screened or buffered from adjacent rights-of-way or sensitive view sheds. 4, all parking spaces shall be delineated with painted lines. This applicant will benefit from the changes to the angled parking standards that you recently reviewed. We are reviewing the plan as if they'll be approved, although it's not something that's gone to council yet or effective yet. They are aware of that, have participated in our process and are following along, but we think that the change will likely pass, and if not, we have a plan B. So the design team would like to come up and present the item.
Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Cornelius. I am project manager at Earl Swinson Associates in Nashville that has been tasked with the parking garage. I'll let my colleagues here to my left, we've got Chandler Smith with Crunk Engineering. He is our civil representative for the project today. And then David Campbell with MedXL representing the owner. So as Margaret Ann touched on, we have been striving primarily as our first focus to meet the GDO requirements for parking garages. Mainly the material was our first concern. So obviously, as it is a garage, it's a supplementary space to the existing campus that we want to support while kind of blending in with the environment. The most closest buildings to us are the MOBs, so the Seton building and the DePaul building. If you're familiar with the campus, they are kind of plan east or west, of the hospital itself, but they also match the materials of the original hospital structure. The brick was our first focus. All of the brick, as stated, is the same brick that you will find on the hospital and the medical office buildings. They are both Belden products, and the representative has provided us with that exact same product on the garage as well. The next 2 samples that you see are our precast. So the garage is a precast structure, double T's with the precast panelization on the exterior. The intent with the gray and the blonde were to somewhat simulate the other materials that are found on the hospital and the MOBs, primarily the metal panel, which is a silver color, which would be the gray, and then the blonde that you see is mimicking the Egress craft or the stone, the lighter stone that you see on the hospital's exterior. If you look up on the elevations here, you can see how these materials are best utilized. Our attempt was to look at the surrounding medical office buildings, which have a podium of the lighter stone. The brick is on the upper floors. There's some strong vertical elements in between, kind of on the column lines, in between the windows of the office buildings, and then obviously the windows themselves are the punched openings within that brick facade. We've tried to simulate this here on the garage. We have the light podium on the bottom. The DRC did communicate to us that they wanted that podium to be similar in height to the podium found on the medical office buildings, which did require us to add an additional layer of the brick, which is reflected in the elevations that you see here today. We were able to pick up that additional brick that they requested. Aside from the podium, how we are giving nod to the hospital is kind of with the panelization. So the openings that you see and the patterning is somewhat similar to kind of the windows that march along the front facade of those medical office buildings. And then we've got the strong vertical elements with the brick at our column lines. So kind of mimicking the window openings on those adjacent office buildings. In all of our stairs, we do have lots of maximized glazing. We've tried to put in as much glazing as we can to daylight those stairwells and also kind of mimic the glazing that's on the medical office buildings. It will also be the exact glazing that you find in those office buildings. So the aluminum frame and the glazing will match that exact product that's found on those buildings. We do have a little bit of the gray precast as an accent, like I said, similar to the metal panel on the hospital. This is found in some really minimal, over on the bottom elevation on the left side. We've tried to break up some of those long runs on those wider sides of the garage, similar to how the metal panel is used on the facade. So that is probably our most minimally utilized element. It's kind of used as an accent, not necessarily a primary material. As far as the massing is concerned, I mentioned the podium, and then we obviously have the openings, which are similar to those window openings. On 3 of the 4 corners, we have our egress stairs, and we've chosen to use those as an opportunity to add a little bit of verticality, so it's a little more interesting than just kind of the same height all the way around the entirety of the garage. Each level of parking is screened from view with a 4-foot-high concrete panel, including the ground level. So any cars parked on the ground level will be screened from view as well. We are utilizing some landscape around in addition to those panels, so we're not relying strictly on the panels to provide that screening. We do have a landscape strip around the area of the first floor that we will be utilizing in addition to those panels, so not just the concrete panels on the first floor. You can see if I can get you guys to the main stair here on the north, or the planned north elevation there. That's the south side of the building. It's the facade that faces the hospital and the medical office buildings the most, so we wanted to make sure that the stair here was a little more visually interesting than some of the other fire access stairs on the less prominent facades of the building. So the one you see with the blonde precast, it has additional glazing and then a little bit of the accent with the gray precast there. So that's likely where the opportunity for signage will be. It will kind of be the focal point on that corner that's closest to the campus to help direct individuals into, out of the garage, and then also to the medical office buildings. There will be a turn right at that stair there. So really our overall effort was to match the campus. I'm happy to answer questions about material, our use of said material, the massing of the building in general, but like I said, the intent was really to blend in here in an effort to provide something that is similar to what is already on site.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Cornelius?
Just a curiosity question, what's the number of spaces?
We are currently at 999, shooting to find that 1,000th space.
I think it looks really nice.
Great, thank you.
Needed as someone
Yeah.
who's a patient there.
Exciting.
This is just on motion, right? No public hearing?
It is on motion.
If there are no more comments, I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all
you.
very much. All right. Our next item is Puckett Creek Station, Lot 9 for the Stanley Chiropractic. It's initial design review of a 4,916 square foot medical office on 1 acre, zoned CH and GDO1, located along Cedar Glades Drive. Stanley Chiropractic is the developer. Ms. Green.
Thank you very much. Our second item under the Gateway Design Overlay portion of our agenda is for you to consider initial design review for another project. It's Lot 9 of the Puckett Creek Station Master Plan Development. Puckett Creek Station, as you may recall, is located west of Fortress Boulevard, south of Manson Pike. Recently, you reviewed a preliminary plat and master plan, go back a couple, that actually has a street extension that will be constructed. And this lot does not rely on that street expansion, so we move forward with it for you to review it. It is for a chiropractic office, which is defined as an office in our zoning ordinance, so it's a use that's permitted by right in the CH zone and within the Gateway Design Overlay District, GDO1. The structure is located along Cedar Glades Drive, on the corner of a private drive. This private drive is actually not a public street, and so it doesn't have a street name, but it looks like it's on a corner, but technically it only has one front lot. The structure itself is just under 5,000 square feet, and the developer, because this lot is a little bit larger than what they need, is anticipating the possibility of an expansion in the future. So you see maybe on the site plan there's an extra green space beside the building. If they would like to come back in the future with an expansion, they certainly will. The developers indicated to me that really this building meets all his needs, and it's a little bit larger than maybe what you might see with this type of medical office elsewhere. But just because the possibility exists, they wanted to lay the site out so that it could be an option in the future if that's something they wanted. It also explains why there's a rather large green space between some of the parking spaces and the building itself. This is the initial design review for the project, and so the focus is on architecture for the building. As I mentioned, it has frontage along Cedar Glades Drive, and that's the elevation that is designed with the front. And so let me make sure I'm on the right page for you. The bottom elevation shows what you would see from that elevation. Then I go ahead and pass the board around.
Is this one heavy, Margaret? I'm just kidding.
Well, I don't think so. I was trying to- The site itself will be required to install Gateway Streetscape Master Plan elements, and they are shown on the plan. The proposed signage is shown on the building of where they anticipate to have it. This building does have, it's about 20 feet tall. It includes, it is a brick building, but it also has some light gray rock and smooth beige stone. So it does meet the materials requirements of the Gateway Design Overlay District. The storefront is a Kynar medium bronze, and you can see what looks like, and just in case it may be, you noticed, it looks like it might be metal. At the top, it's actually not metal. It's a cementitious siding, and so the metal canopy does project over these buildings, and that's really to help with the afternoon sun going in the buildings. But this material on the top is not a metal, so I wanted to point that out to you. I'm going to invite the architect to come up to talk about the building. If you have any questions about the design, or if you have any feedback, we would appreciate it. The architect will implement those before it comes back for final design review. Here's some perspective elevations I think help show that it's not just a flat rectangle, that they've really done some things to help project various parts of the building and create the breaks in the wall plane that we look for. So, Brett, do you want to?
My name is Brent Lejean. I'm with Scott Wilson Architect in Franklin. And thanks, Margaret, for the summary. That was really great. If you have any questions about any of the elevations or materials that you see in the material board, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Probably one of the first questions you might have is the awning detail. Awnings over windows is a pretty common element on these commercial buildings. We articulated articulated it a little bit differently with some steel H columns and steel I-beams with this metal plate kind of serving as the shading devices over the windows, but they'll all be black to tie into the black windows, the black coping over the parapet wall. Excuse me. Just wanted to make a point about that, because some people, when they first see these awnings, are not quite sure what they're looking at. So I wanted to make sure it's a traditional element, but articulated a little bit differently. And I'm just going after something a little bit more interesting characteristically. But if you have any questions about the materials here or any of the architectural elements on the building, I'd be happy to answer those questions for you. This is that material that Margaret pointed out to you. It's a composite panel. From a distance, as you're driving by, the parapet will look like a band with a metal coping across it. As you get closer, you'll see there's a little bit more interest in the veneer on the material. It's got this grain and a slight bevel between the panels as they come together, and it'll be installed vertically to enhance the overall horizontally nature of the building. So as you get closer, you'll kind of see some of this interesting grain in the lines in that parapet wall. We chose as opposed to using a traditional EIFS type material that you see on pretty much any commercial building in the area. Something that might add a little bit more interest to the building, because architecturally, from a massing standpoint, the building is quite simple. It's a large rectangle with a smaller square popping up for the entrance. So adding a couple layers of detail and elements like this kind of enhances the character of the building.
Okay, any questions? Comments regarding design review? And this is initial design review.
So there will be an expansion, potential expansion?
Right now, it's probably 60-40 no, but it could turn into 60-40 yes. Right now, the idea is that there is availability of land next to this, immediately adjacent, and it would be an actual expansion of this building, but probably a different tenant. Maybe it's a shared tenant next door to it. So the architecture would continue in the same style as the existing building, but long term, there could potentially be the need for the owner to add an addition to the building to the, I believe that's to the west.
And that expansion would come back to the Planning Commission
Correct.
if they decided to do that.
Yeah.
Is that typical to do that? Just my concern is, what if some of these materials are discontinued or not available, and then we look a little choppy in the GDO, which isn't my favorite. Is there precedence for that, Margaret Ann?
I think the hospital is a good example of where they've had to go back and refine that brick. I will say that on this, the cast stone, I'm confident that even 40 years from now, we'll probably be able to find it. This gray brick may be different. We do ask for bricks to have their inherent color, not be painted. And so I think that there are things that you may have to have it mimic maybe this and use the stone as opposed to the brick, because as you say, right now people are having trouble finding the exact bricks that Planning Commission are approving, and so they're finding the same brick with other manufacturers, but there's nothing to say in 10 years that the same brick will be available. But I feel confident that stone, that smooth stone, will. It's a fairly timeless material, and it's created, right? It's not a natural stone. So natural materials are a little bit more difficult to match than the created or manufactured stones. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I would say that the elements that the addition would probably entail would be similar to the taller element on the end. This end where all this stone material is, that same material would be used on the tall element on the opposite end of the building to balance it out. So we wouldn't be needing as much of these materials perhaps here. This brick here is a solid color all the way through. It's not a painted brick as well, if that was, in case you wanted to know.
And I apologize, Margaret, this was not on my radar when I reviewed the agenda last night. I know this isn't visible from Fortress Boulevard, but architecturally, all of the buildings on Cedar Glades are very different in style and in color. Does this feel like we're just adding to that? Because we have a new building that just got built right across the street, and it's a totally different color and architecture and style.
The buildings, yeah, because there's a Sonic, and then there's a car wash, and then there's a multi-tenant retail building, and there's a hotel that wants to come to you next month in the same center. I think the time change, they are quite different. Your firm did work on another one. Didn't you work on a office building just across the street?
I don't remember.
Bob's building?
Batchelor? Bob Batchelor?
Yeah.
Yes, we did that one as well.
I looked at Matt because Matt's friend.
The memory.
But yeah, they are different. They don't have the same campus style, and if that's something that you want us to start looking for or implementing, I mean, certainly we can. This side of the interstate is a little different than the eastern side of the interstate. I think this side tends to be a little bit more choppy, and you can see the decades a little easier than you can in some other areas.
On the west side of the interstate?
On the west side, yeah.
Oh, I mean, I disagree. I mean, other than the Sonic being there for a while, everything else is fairly new.
Yeah.
And it's just really commercial right there. I looked at the building. I think the building looks great. I think the use is great. But when the design board came up, I think I was just more shocked at the colors than I anticipated being, because everything else over there is red brick and like a whitish red. But if I'm the only one, it's fine. I'm just, the west side is my side. That and parking, That's right.
People like those dark bricks. They're not my favorite, but the next item that we're going to talk about, 7-Eleven, and the Gateway has a dark gray brick. It's a thing that I had to just accept about 18 months ago, that everybody likes this dark brick. Buffalo Wild Wings, Mazda, I think, opened the door. So long as they're not glazed and they have that inherent color that we talked about. We've just been presenting them to you, but these gray bricks are, how long have you been using those?
I went to the A&P in Franklin, and he said that this one is one of their most popular colors, and they make a ton of it. They make a lot of it, so.
Sure, yeah, I'm not contesting that it looks good. I personally like it. I'd build a house out of it. I think I'm more concerned that it is, we have 5 different designs on one tiny, this street is so short that I sprinted up and down it this morning on my morning run. That's how short Cedar Glades Drive is. So we're talking 5 different architectural styles on one sprint-worthy street, filled with a lot of tractor trailers currently. Almost got hit by a car this morning. That's fine.
Does this area have a design overlay that controls that type of?
The Gateway
Aesthetic,
is
gateway.
what controls it. There's not an additional, it used to be zone plan development, but it's not anymore.
Okay.
The developer has submitted complaints to us about the tractor trailers parking in the public right-of-way, which they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, that was my
We've shared
formal complaint, just so everyone knows.
We've shared those with officers a couple weeks ago, and hoping that they can help. I think when he finally builds that street and traffic can finally move, that's going to help. And so I think he's kind of created his own problem, because it's a great hiding place for people who maybe need to park trucks. But for now, we reached out to the Murfreesboro Police Department, and they're supposed to be responding if I'm not following up on that.
No, you're awesome. Thank you, Margaret Ann. I'm really excited for this tiny road to be developed. It's been there for a long time, and we're slowly, every couple of years, getting a new building.
Yeah.
And I've seen the sign stand like chiropractic's coming for almost a year now, and I think it's great. I'm really just stuck on the color scheme being so different.
It's
Anyone else have thoughts?
preemptive, but that hotel is also proposing similar color schemes, and so I'd love your feedback.
Plan on me having similar feedback.
The colors don't bother me. and
I'd love to
meet
see
standards,
something else come in besides just all the red brick.
I like it I like something besides the red brick myself.
I agree completely. It looks great. A difference. Okay, well then someone make a motion. I'm good.
Nothing else, I'll move for approval, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate it, thank you all.
Don't fire me as your client, Dr. Stanlick. I'm sorry.
Okay, next we have Clary Park Lot 2, it's 7-Eleven. It's initial design review of a 5,300 square foot convenience store and 3,333 square foot gasoline canopy on 1.8 acres, zone CH and GDO 1, located along Medical Center Parkway and Willow Oak Trail. Southeast Murfreesboro Medical LLC is the developer. Ms. Green.
Thank you very much. approach. Our last initial design review item in the gateway portion is for you to consider Lot 2 of the Clary Park development. Lot 2 is in Area 3 of the PUD, to not get confusing. And so those are the out parcels that face Medical Center Parkway. And so this project is proposed to be a gas station convenience store located on a corner. And so if you see the ortho photo, which I have on the screen right now, it doesn't quite depict the future conditions. I've spoke with the developer, and they're anticipating the street construction to be finished by the end of the year. I believe they're waiting on the water plans to be approved by CUD to get some of that work finished. But the street will extend, as we discussed here. And then there will be what was called Clary Lanes, now is Robbie Corlew. And so this site is actually located in a unique position in the fact that it has 3 front lot lines. Even though you don't see them today, they will be 3 front lot lines. It'll Medical Center Parkway, which of course is the street with the highest functioning classification. It's a major arterial signalized intersection. And then also Willow Oak Trail extending through the property, and then Robbie Corlew along the rear. And so a unique challenge with this lot and lots that you'll see in the future is to come up with a design that honors the site location. It's a very, very prominent location, high visibility, and it has 3 fronts. The gateway requires 4-sided architecture on all buildings. They all need to be compatible. But in addition to just 4-sided architecture, you've got 3 fronts. And so this site plan, of course, you can see those 3 front lines here. And so Medical Center Parkway on this plan is to the bottom of the page. Robbie Corlew is to the top. And the proposed development shares a drive with the adjacent lot as shown in the master plan. This lot, of course, isn't created yet. The subdivision and the construction were approved as an integrated subdivision project, and so Hines is constructing that development, and then the builder will be 7-Eleven. Something a bit unique with these projects is the frontage of all public roads in this part of the gateway is required to put gateway streetscape elements in. Some of those things are putting in by the developer, but ultimately I've shared, and probably they're tired of hearing it time and time again, that the C of O for this project will depend upon those things being completed. So the street trees being in, the irrigation of the back of curb, the pedestrian scale street lights, the pedestrian plaza, signalized intersections, signage, all those kind of elements to back of curb that are in our Gateway Streetscape Master Plan are required to be in with a part of this project, even if Hines is doing the work for the developer, and the developer or the builder, it still is important. And so we've got those comments in our comments, and they'll follow the project through its construction. But as I mentioned, this is a site that has 3 fronts. They have put the gas canopy along the north side, which is the Robbie Corlew side. So the building is here. The gasoline canopy is here. I don't have a good way of G. It's a terrible G. And so when you're along Medical Center Parkway, it'll be behind the building, and so I think that's what's important for you to note. Of course, initial design review, the focus is on architecture, and to get feedback regarding the design of the building, I'll go ahead and pass around the board.
Thank you. Good morning.
It's heavier than the last, but not as heavy as the cast concrete. And so the material board shows the different materials proposed on the building. This is a 7-Eleven, so we've been working with them for the past few months. And of course, one of the challenges with a brand like this is they have a strong brand. We also have a strong community identity, and so we wanted them to be able to work within the boundaries of the guidelines we've established that are important to us, and so we've shared them with them about the development. On the elevations, and I'll have the architect come up and explain the building to you, there's real glass and backlit spandrel glass, and so the darker glass indicates not real windows but faux windows, and they're backlit. And then we did have to work with them to put more brick on the building because, of course, the gateway does require the buildings to be brick, stone, and rock. The other materials can be secondary, like an ephes awning or maybe something different on the along the entrance, which you can see on the elevations that you have before you. The building has 2 colors of brick, and you can see those on the board. One is white velour. Above the entrance is Nichiha, vintage wood, and cedar. Nichiha is a cementitious board, so it's fibrous cement and concrete kind of mixed together. They have a flat roof, but raised it in different areas to try to create some interest in the roof line. The building is mostly flat. They have some elements that project about a foot to create some offsets, because as you know, the rectangle buildings, part of what we ask is that they don't have those long uninterrupted facades, that they have breaks in the wall plane to add shadow lines and dimensions and create interest. Also, elements that face the road, we ask for them to have treatments. Of course, they don't have to be the operational front, but project as the front. So this building has 3 fronts. This elevation, this one, and then this smaller one is what faces Willow Oak. And in that side, they were doing some of the brick inlay works with the awnings, and so it's a different brick pattern and a different look to kind of create a front, but not, because we know that there can't be any windows there. Not using spandrel there because of the look of the building. The gasoline canopy is designed with vintage black velour brick, which is on that board, columns and composite material fascia, and a bronze standing seam metal roof. In this package, I included their signage package, which I think the architect, when she gave it to me, probably knew that we would shudder a bit. It doesn't line up with our gateway standards. They'll work on that when they come back to you. For example, the banding on the canopy, we don't allow more than 1 color and 8 inches max, and so what they're showing in their signage package doesn't comply with our standards. And then you can see some signage on the building that doesn't meet the standard either. But the gateway does ask that requested signage be shown, and so that's what they're doing. If you scroll through the materials and saw those, I wanted to point them out to you. Okay, so at this time, I'll invite the team representing the project to turn and go through the design with you. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
I've got one.
Sure.
So, Clary Park, uses, remind me, can a liquor store go here?
I would need to look it up. I did look up gas station on this lot.
Right.
This lot is zoned CH, Commercial Highway District, and so if a use is prohibited in private restrictive covenants, I would not opine upon whether it's permitted or not, because it's a private covenant that they've put on themselves. The zoning, or the areas that are zoned PUD, I would review the book, see if they're permitted, and then give an opinion on it.
So this wasn't part of a PUD?
It's not zone PUD, it's zone CH, but there are restrictive covenants.
So, just so the applicant hears me, we were real particular on a gas station and liquor store, all a part of the same development as you come off of 24. That is, I guess you could say, very near Embassy Suites or in front of Embassy Suites. And so we will be looking for the same thing here, so that we don't have the cluttered element of some of the other liquor stores that we have throughout Murfreesboro. I'm just going to voice that on the front end of this deal.
And can I ask a question, Margaret Ann? So in this book that we're looking at, part of what we're getting ready to hopefully approve an initial design review, since it has this signage in here with these things that we know we don't allow, I mean, are we able to approve this subject to all staff comments? Do your staff comments already mention specifically that we wouldn't allow these, the red and the green and the, all the different colors on the canopy and all that kind of stuff?
My comment is more vague in your report. it says that the signage shown in the package is not compliant with our sign ordinance, that they don't need to move forward thinking that it is compliant. You could, if you wanted to, because part of seeing the sign at your level, because we know they get a sign permit later, we understand that, but signage is important in the way the building projects, the way that it presents itself, and the scale, and in the placement of certain architectural elements on the building. So you might want to say to them that you want them to show a compliant signage package, either defer action on initial or at final design review. You want to see them actually do some work now that they probably would normally put off to later. I would normally suggest that. I think you had similar comments about a gas station further down the road, had some hot dogs on the side of the building and some hamburgers and Cokes, and those weren't allowed, and the applicant, of course, acknowledged that, and then before final design review took them off of the racetrack. And so you could ask them to see something that really, like, have them put that work in now, which they probably should be doing anyway. And it's just most people are used to putting it off later, that I think they just submitted what they normally would ask for. We did, as a courtesy outside of your comments, I did ask our sign administrator to look at it and just give me some initial feedback, and I emailed those specific feedbacks to them separately outside of our report, just so they can kind of have an idea of it, because I suspected that when this came to you and you saw the giant chicken and Laredo and the stripes everywhere, that maybe it would be something that would draw your attention. And so, I mean, certainly it would be in line to request them to show something that would be compliant.
Speaking to Mr. Halliburton's point of view, I think it's more than fair to have the same sign restrictions on this one as we had coming off the interstate.
Yeah, agreed.
So the one coming off the interstate, the applicants voluntarily subjected themselves to the GDO 3 sign regulations, which are the most restrictive we have here. This project right now is under the GDO 1 sign restrictions, and the other project was GDO 3. In addition to, I think you all made some comments about not having shelving in front of windows and making sure the masonry was high enough to actually meet the needs of the interior of the building. I don't recall, and I may need them to speak to it, I don't recall the GDO 3 discussion for signage applying to this project.
I think they also had restricted covenants associated with, I could be wrong.
They did.
With respects to the signage itself, because it wasn't something that we could enforce.
Right, they voluntarily put those restricted
Right.
covenants on themselves.
Right.
They did that.
I guess, would this one be voluntarily do the same thing?
Air quotes.
Volley to our attorneys.
I believe that your approval can be conditioned.
Oh, we can't condition it, but we can ask, right?
Well, we can condition.
Okay.
You know, if you're not in a planned development, then you're not supposed to negotiate the terms of the approval. But it is appropriate to condition approvals, just like we condition plan approvals that certain right-of-way be dedicated, or that an off-site sewer easement be dedicated if it's necessary to connect your property. So there are a variety of conditions that can be imposed by the Planning Commission and Council. And I believe that this condition would be one that would fall within that pattern.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I think that got our questions. Were they going to, coming up to make a presentation?
Hi, I'm Alina Orr. I'm representing MJM Architects. So our intent here was to use the materials and the colors and the massing that the city's looking for in the GDO, and we also wanted to incorporate some of the contemporary elements that are part of the Clary Park Master Plan. So you'll see that we relied heavily on brick and the associated detailing, kind of classical detailing with brick. And then we introduced the fiber cement board, the Nichiha, that's at the entry elements. That brings a little more contemporary feel to it. We also orient it vertically. The material that we're specifying there, it's a pretty good quality, and it comes with its own sort of finishing pieces, so it usually has a nice look once it's installed. And we also thought that the warmness of the Nichiha panels was a good offset to the white and black brick. And to your point on the last project, the white and black is very popular lately. Almost everything we work on, various different clients, that's what everybody is leaning towards. I know in some of the other ones that we've worked on for different clients, they like the contrast. They feel like the visual contrast is really crisp, makes their signage stand out. So we see a lot of that recently. We're proposing, I actually brought some watercolors. If you guys want to see these separately, they match the brick colors. So we're trying to have the classic look of the brick, but by using the same watercolors, it gives it a really smooth, sort of modern look. And the backlit spandrel that Margaret Ann mentioned, that is where you see kind of the darker gray glass on here. These are spandrel windows that we will do like a white frosted glass, and do LED rope lighting behind it so that it has a more sort of alive appearance than a typical spandrel film. We are doing the changes in plane that are required by the GDO, both in the footprint of the building and along the roof line. We're screening, there's a lot of roof equipment associated with this use, so it's all screened on all 4 sides by the parapet wall. And you had mentioned some concern about clutter. Like, you're talking about stuff that's on the exterior of the building?
No,
inside.
in the interior.
Oh, okay.
You can see through the windows.
Yeah.
Well, so what you're going to see through the main windows on the front is there's a seating bar there.
Window signs, temporary window signs at liquor stores.
A signage itself. Okay. That I don't know much about. I can find out more from the tenant about that.
Okay.
So they're basically just covering glass with a lot of signage. Okay.
Yeah, I don't really want to see an advertisement for 2-for-1 corn dogs in the window, you know?
Okay.
And when you say frosted glass, I'm assuming you still can see in?
Yeah, we actually have a sample of it on here. Yeah, so it's,
okay.
Translucent.
Yeah, okay.
And so you'll be able to see the lighting from behind, and I can't remember how we detailed it on the last project. Behind it is the sheathing of the building, so I believe we expect for it to be like painted a light color. So you really just see the glow of the light. You're not going to be able to see any specific building materials behind it.
You don't see inside.
So that's all I have for you guys. Let me know any questions I can answer.
Okay.
Questions?
So back to this signage piece, at what point do we address that? Margaret Ann?
At initial design review, the focus is on the architecture of the building, and so today they're looking for feedback on the architecture. You can consider the signage a part of the architecture and decide not to approve initial design review today, or you can ask them to condition today's approval on them having that information at final design review, whichever way you're more comfortable. But at final design review is also when you approve the site plan. So today there's no site plan approval for the project, although the information is of course provided to give you context and understand the proposed design for the site.
And just to clarify, when you say signage, do you mean just exterior or interior?
Both.
Okay, you mean both. Do you mean both?
Yeah, I think both. I think that Elena needs to talk to her client and understand what it is they'd like to do. And then, of course, we would want to see what's going on.
I think it's fair if we set the standard to say this is what we expect. That way when she goes back to her client, she can go, this is what they expect. Instead of asking what they want and then come back to us and go, no, that won't work. Let's just set the standard and say this is what we expect.
I don't have any issue with that.
Yeah, other than that, I think it looks good.
Yeah, I agree.
Those are my...
She remembered something I had forgotten. They had white ephes on the building, and she said that even though it's called bright white, it's not actually bright white, and that's there. And I said, well, it's giving me heebie-jeebies. Can you give us some options?
This is all buckskin, and we are fine with switching out this for the more beige.
If you have, and we can bring it.
Yeah, if you guys want to look at it.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
So we get to pick one?
This ethos or this one, and of course she brought the mortar for the brick, but these are the ethos singles.
Oh.
The white ethos gets real dirty, we talked about that in the past. Of course, it's on the cornice, which is better than being on the side of the building. But
Yeah, that looks good.
But even then, when you start pulling stuff out of if signs go in that ephes, then you can see where the sign once was, that sort of thing, unless they...
In this case, there shouldn't, the signage is not finalized yet, but there shouldn't be much signage. Yeah.
this is the ethos
Okay,
only on the cornice.
Very top.
I'm with you.
Here is brick.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to use.
Well, for what it's worth, I like the white ephes then.
The color name was bright white, and I
Yeah.
told her that it was like scaring me that I was not understanding.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider that bright white.
Yeah, the naming convention, this is from Drive It, they have one called China White that's actually the very bright white. It's a little misleading.
Somewhere between white and being blinded, right?
Yeah. Either one, is very similar to the white brick, but we're fine with using the more beige color.
I think overall, I think the building, I think we're going in the right direction on that. I'm not 100% sure I understand, though, on this frosted glass. So we're not really looking inside the building. So we're not going to be seeing the back of shelving units and stacks of beer cans or motor oil cans or anything like that.
That's
because
exactly
we're really
right.
just...
And that's actually why we use the spandrel glass, because as you can imagine with a gas station, most of the wall perimeter has stuff on it. So it's not really conducive to putting a true window there. So in those cases, we do the spandrel glass. So there's a full stud wall, with finishes on both sides, and then this spandrel glass assembly is on the outside of that. So if you see anything through the translucent frosted material, it's just going to be the sheathing behind it, which we will likely paint a light color to help that LED really glow.
But so Matthew or whoever, so that's okay with codes? You can't even see in?
Is that through the doors?
Except through the door?
I guess from a police.
Well, on both of these sides that we're looking at, the light blue glass is clear vision glass.
Oh.
And this is in response to our design guidelines that require 35% void space on commercial uses. Void can be with like actual recesses, real windows, real doors. And so they're trying to meet our architectural standards with, in some cases, I don't love spandrel, but like self-storage uses a lot of spandrel. If it's not backlit at night or at 4 o'clock in winter months, it looks really weird to have these windows that are up, they just look really fake. And so across the street in the avenues, the jewelry store has backlit spandrel facing Med Center, and it's what we use. And if they're going to use it, we ask them to backlight it so it has a glow. And but it's to meet the design guidelines is why she's added it. It's an extra cost. Usually it's not, people would like to not do anything, but it's to meet our standards, and yes, it meets codes. And yes, no, you cannot put signage in the spandrel,
Right.
which is, I guess, a thing to think about, although you could put it in other windows.
I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to all staff comments, and add the condition of applying the GDO 3 signage guidelines.
Second, if that was a good one.
Is that the right motion?
Is that the right motion?
Mr. Oggs?
Yes.
Then second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you guys
very
for your time.
much. Okay, next we have Clary Park Lot 20, main event, final design and site plan review of a 48,808 square foot commercial indoor amusement located on 6 acres, zoned CH, GDO1 and GDO2, located along Gresham Park Drive, main event developer. Ms. Green.
Thank you. We have one item of final design review today, and it's for a proposed main event, which is located within the Clary Park development on Lot 20.
Time out.
Hold on.
Can I clarify something from last vote? Does that include the other one we did not allow liquor store signage facing Medical Center Parkway?
GDO3.
Was that the same as GDO3? Was that a separate exclusion?
I think that was the separate restrictions that they put on.
I think they did that.
individually that we asked for, which I think we could still ask for at final.
Okay. All good.
We think we can ask for that at final. Y'all can tell us.
Yeah, it was a separate exclusion, the window signs. And I think just to make sure that they understand, Mr. Mulchin, thank you.
We are so sorry.
We were just clarifying that the condition of approval also included the condition with window signs, that they not...
The liquor store.
We're hoping to ask for, as we did in the other one across the street that we keep referring to, we had a self-imposed restriction that they put on their property that was outside of the GDO3 guidelines, but that just prohibited the use of all those signs in the windows for
Liquor.
all the liquor, the beer, those kind of things, just plastered,
I was going to say, can you provide her with the same verbiage?
copy of whatever we have on that one?
Sure.
That'd be nice.
I think that'll be fine. I just need to be
Okay.
Yeah, just copy that one.
Yeah. Sorry to call y'all back in. We appreciate that.
Thank you for coming back.
Thanks so much. Okay. Back to our main event.
Main event, Lot 20 of the Clary Park development. It is zoned CH Commercial Highway District. It's also located in both the GDO1 and GDO2 overlays. The GDO2 is the part of the GDO along Wilkinson Pike, and then the majority of the gateway that we know is GDO1. This item came to the Planning Commission a couple months ago, and when it came to you, it was for a what we define as an indoor commercial amusement. It's on 6 acres and has frontage along Gresham Park Drive. It's adjacent to the Area 2 townhomes, with David Weekley townhomes, which are currently under construction, and you've reviewed and approved some plans for those. The structure itself is 48,808 square foot structure with several uses. Just under 12,000 square feet of commercial indoor, about 1,000 square feet office, approximately 700 square feet retail, 22 bowling lanes, and a 435-seat restaurant. The uses included as a part of this are permitted in the CH district. The site is providing the minimum separations that we would see from the parking and adjacent property lines, as well as from the building and the parking areas. This project is not proposing any ground signs. The ground signs were subject of discussion at initial design review. I think that the message we heard is that even if they didn't want any ground signage, you'd like for them to have some directional signage on Medical Center Parkway. Directional signage, of course, is regulated differently, and we did confirm with Ms. Teresa Stevens that it is something that could be here, and so they are proposing the directional signage, but the site itself doesn't have any ground signs. I think they believe the building is substantial enough to act as the sign itself. The building does have access to Medical Center Parkway through a private drive, and then also a shared drive to Gresham Park Drive and its own drive to Gresham Park. So its own drive, shared drive, and then a shared drive. Rooms to Go, of course, is located near this project, as well as McDonald's. The site itself does demonstrate compliance with our site layout. There are some parking analysis that they've done based on the definition of floor area. We discussed it just a bit at initial design review, but mentioned that at final design review, which is today, is when also they're doing site plan approval. So the shared parking agreements they're proposing would be a part of today's review and approval or denial, or however you decide to move forward. One is they're utilizing the definition of floor area to find areas that can be excluded from the parking calculations, and that would typically be mechanical areas, hallways, other shared spaces. And the second part of that shared parking analysis is that they're requesting that the parking between the uses be shared. So folks at the restaurant will likely be there to also bowl, or folks at the laser tag would also be there to use the video games. And so they did submit a shared parking analysis for your consideration. At the Planning Commission, there was, staff asked you to consider a material called roll fab metal and see if you believe it's an acceptable material. The majority of the building is a brick, but they're also proposing to use this. I better go to an elevation so you can be reminded. They are proposing to use the roll fab in some areas that are noted as MC2. So along the entrance, you can see MC2 on each side. And then there on one side, you can see a panel that says MC2. Those are the locations here. And there's none on the back. And then on the front, there are two areas. So the principal material is that brick that we've asked for, so they do comply with the brick and the stone, but they are requesting approval for a tertiary or secondary material to be the roll fab. We have the samples here that I'll pass around.
Why'd you look at me when you said that?
Here, very much for you.
Thank you.
So they are lighting the building. We did discuss the fact that white lighting is required in the gateway, and they're aware of that. But they are adding architectural lighting integrated into the building to add that nighttime interest to the building. The sign that you see from the front that says Eat, Play, Bowl is actually not on the window. It is set back several feet from the entrance, and so it's not regulated by our sign ordinance, and it would be permitted. The Planning Commission asked for some more information on the roll fab metal before making a decision about its use, and so on this sheet we have a comparison of various materials provided by the architect. I asked for them to use composite wood, cement board, and wood plank tile as comparisons, since those are materials that we use in the gateway elsewhere. And so the 7-Eleven you just reviewed is using Nishiha, which is the cement board, and they had that wood look material above the entrance, and so that would be, the comparison would be with that material. So the first column, of course, is the roll fab, and I'm going to invite them to the podium to go through those materials. If you have questions about the material, they're prepared to answer those. Other than that, do you have any questions from staff?
Questions? Okay.
Thank you.
There you go.
I'm Mike Gray I work I'm the corporate architect, or architect for Mighty C4 Adam Axon. He wasn't able to make it today. So thank you for having us and considering our project. We would like to ask your permission to use the roll fab in lieu of Nichiha. We've used some Nichiha in some of our previous projects. It's a very nice material. Fundamentally, we feel like they're very, very equivalent in the appearance. So that what we like about the roll fab better than the Nichiha is it's cement board, so you see the cement, and it's more of an application on the gray of the cement shows more. The roll fab is a fantastic product. It's powder coated. It's super durable unless you drop it hard or whatever. I think if you drop Nichiha, it would break as well. what it does, it's really more of a wood look without all the problems of wood, because having done stained wood buildings, you have to you have to keep the real wood up to date all the time, and it's a constant maintenance issue. This niche, or the roll fab is something, it's basically, I wouldn't say indestructible, but it's very, very durable. We put it on a lot of our centers. Our center in Knoxville has it on it, and that's what we're doing as a brand going forward. And then, let's see, what else? That was a big, all right, okay. So I appreciate your attention, and we're very excited to come to Murfreesboro.
I think you may have answered this question before, but so you say you have it on other projects. How old are these projects that have the roll fab on them?
So I believe we started using it in 2016.
Okay.
And Knoxville opened in 2017, I believe. It's on Knoxville.
Okay.
And so everything since then.
Yeah, the Knoxville building looks real good.
Okay.
So is this piece we passed around, that's roll fab?
Yes.
Since I know what neither one of them are. Okay.
I'm good with it, and I've seen the building in Knoxville. It looks good.
So that was my only question when we asked for that, was how does it hold up to fade and all of that? But you're saying it still looks good after, 4 years or 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
We try to keep it out of where kids kick it down low. But even where they can kick it, it does really well. So.
Okay. I'm good. Yeah.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Next, we are moving on to our plats and plans. We have first Greystone Section 1. We'll be voting on this in two separate votes, but Ms. Smith is going to present for us. The first thing we'll be voting on will be an amended master plan and amended preliminary plat for 43 lots on 136.5 acres, zone PRD, located north of Villes Road and west of Double Springs Road. Meritage Homes is the developer. Good afternoon, Ms. Smith.
Good afternoon, Commission. This particular item, as you mentioned, it is two separate items, but we're doing one staff report because they're integrally related. This particular project, you might recall, geez, haven't we seen this before? Yes, you have. You saw it back in March. Since then, we had been working on construction plan drawings for the project. You'll see the overall project here on the screen is on Villes Road and Double Springs, and phase one is kind of the shaded light area here, and it is 4 phases of a project. When they were working on their wetlands permitting, there are several areas that became high-quality wetlands that could not be converted, so they have removed some of the units and expanded some of the original wetland areas and made some minor modifications to, for example, curvature of the street in this subdivision. So they did come back in with an amended master plan, an amended preliminary plat, and then really the site plan review for the HPR, single-family detached homes, that'll be on 5 lots of record. So as you may have noticed, instead of having 144 single-family homes, we're looking at 141. Instead of 159 HPR single-family homes, we're looking at 154. And then instead of 100 townhomes, we're looking at 89 townhomes. So all of those things have reduced. What we do not have, and we did put in our staff comments, is they are doing improvements and actually adding this collector road. This current plan shows that collector road stopping at this point. It will actually, per our staff comments, need to be extended to where it's adjacent at this location here along the amenity center. The amenity center also was not shown in the plat, so both that street and that common area would be added to the preliminary plat, as well as the westerly side of that collector road. So all of this wetlands was shown in Phase 1 to be part of the development. So what we wanted to make sure, everything that was in Phase 1 in the original planned development is included in this one with those small modifications to the sites. The other things that we will see in this particular project with Phase 1 is here at the intersection, the plans don't currently reflect the 4-laning of that area. This is going to be the future connector road down to Irby Lane. So this will ultimately have another street that comes out across the street. So this needs to be a 4-lane cross section instead of a 3-lane at this point. Also, they are looking at doing improvements here into Beals Road to have a left-hand turn pocket to be able to come into that subdivision. That is also included in our staff comments at that location, as well as if you go further towards Double Springs. This is really sensitive today. I can barely touching it. One more. There we go. So at this area, it also is currently shown as a 2-lane cross-section. It'll need to be a 3-lane cross-section here to allow 2 independent left turn lanes going out of the subdivision and a turn lane coming into the subdivision as well here. And then lastly, for this particular phase of the subdivision, there'll be some improvements out at Bradyville Pike, which is an off-site, but when we looked at the traffic impact analysis, it showed that there needed to be an additional left turn pocket on Bradyville Pike that will be installed with Phase 1 of the project site. Other things to note on this particular project, scrolling down, is that Lincoya Drive will actually get a appropriate terminus point as well in Phase 1, and then future phases, Medford Campbell will actually tie in to this new roadway. In looking at that overall landscape plan, we still have actually increased amounts of landscaping in place, but they do have, of course, the large step field in the main area and a step field down here at the southerly portion is Phase 1 with ponding basins. And later we will have the site plan review for their amenity center, which is required at 50% of construction of the Phase 1 units. All of the HPR units are here along this east-west roadway as well as this north-south and are part of that site plan review for the HPR for the project. So with that, staff believes that those items are listed in the staff comments. Generally in red, that those things be integrated into the master plan, the amended preliminary plat, and the HPR component, and with those things, we believe it will be in good order, if approved, made subject to all staff comments. I don't know, the engineer is here, should you have any specific questions, or if else you want to go over specifics. And we are looking at 2 separate motions on this particular item as listed in the agenda.
And just to supplement with what Ms. Smith presented, these are 2 items that you had previously approved. They're simply coming back to you today because they had to slightly amend their layout because of the identification of those wetlands. And so because you approved it previously, we wanted to bring it back to you for approval of the amended plans because of the wetlands.
Thank you. Mr. Plumley?
Good afternoon. My name is Aus Ahmed with SEC. I represent Meritage Homes. Basically, this subdivision was presented to the Planning Commission and approved previously, and then after further investigations on the site, some wetlands have been found, and after coordination with TDEC, we have to adjust the site to preserve this high-quality wetland. So these plans represent these changes, and we agree on the staff comments. We will work with them to add all the turn lanes and roadway improvement. If staff shall have any questions, please feel free.
Any questions?
Not, I'll move for approval subject to all staff comments.
Okay, so this is a motion and a second on the amended master plan and amended preliminary plat. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then, can we go ahead and vote on the amended site plan for the 49 single-family detached homes?
I'll make a motion to approve with all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank y'all very much. Next, we have Parkway Place, Lot 8. It's a site plan for a 22,500 square foot multi-tenant commercial building on 2.07 acres, zone PID, located along Richard Reeves Drive. Swanson Development LP is the developer. Ms. Smith.
Good afternoon again. This particular project is very similar to one that you saw just, I think, 2 months ago, which was Lot 7 due north of this particular site. This is coming to you because it is part of a planned development, and that planned development book states that all site plans come to the Planning Commission for consideration of your architecture. You may recall this particular area, it's looking at 10 tenant spaces that are, it's a spec building, and it, again, under construction now are 2 lots even further to the north. They all have the similar architectural components, canopies, building materials, and is built to where it has kind of a office frontage space on the front side of the property. Of course, this one does have that block wall that was constructed a couple years back, a 9-foot with an existing buffer area, so those do still apply to this particular project. We did show the turning movements, and included in your staff comments is we are asking that an additional easement of some sort that's acceptable to the city attorney be put in place, as this is the lot line here between the 2 properties. The applicant doesn't intend on selling these properties separately at this point in time, but we want to make sure if there are any changes in ownership that adequate access easements are in place so that you don't have a problem for these truck turning movements at a later point in time. There is 1 truck dock that's actually tucked back here in the building, which was similar to Lot 7 that you approved 2 months ago. Looking at the elevations, these are literally identical to the Lot 7 buildings that were in place, and they are utilizing brick-type materials on the frontage, and then they're using IMP, which are insulated metal panels, as they are doing in most of that planned development. With the staff comments, I did talk to the applicant this afternoon. They're in concurrence with all of the staff comments, and we ask that you consider approval subject to those comments. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to try to answer them.
Okay. Any questions regarding this site plan?
If not, we will move for approval subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you so much, Commission.
Next, we have our new business. We'll be scheduling public hearings for these items. Our first item is a zoning application for approximately 30 acres located at 1750 North Thompson Lane to be rezoned from RS15 and PSO to CM and PSO. New Vision Baptist Church is the applicant. And Ms. Green and Mr. Aguilera.
Thank you very much. Mr. Aguilera and I have been working together on an application that was submitted for you to consider rezoning property owned by New Vision Church. This property is located along West College, West Northfield Boulevard, North Thompson Lane, and is currently developed with institutional group assembly, which is a fancy way of saying a church. The property itself is zoned RS15, which is single-family residential district. It is also zoned PSO, planned signage signage overlay district. And as an RS-15 property, anytime the property owners wish to make changes to their campus or master plan, they are required to get a special use amendment approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Recently, after a special use amendment, the design team were working with Mr. Aguilera on their development plans, and it came to staff's attention that their building height exceeded what could be approved under the RS-15 district. And then the conversation evolved from that to staff suggesting they request a rezoning of the property, and the rezoning would permit the building to be much taller than it is under the single-family zone. It also would eliminate the need to go back to the BZA each time they make a change in their programming that has a change to the campus. The property itself, as I mentioned, is a single-family residential district. However, it's located along North Thompson Lane, which is an arterial road just across the street from Stones River Battlefield. It's adjacent to property owned by Vanderbilt, where they have a children's clinic. To the south is West Northfield Boulevard, which is a portion of the Northfield Boulevard extension that was constructed by the city of Murfreesboro. Let's see if I have a good way of zooming in. I think we've talked about this extension a couple times I think earlier this month when you recommended to take the GDO off of this property. You saw that the Northfield Boulevard in our major transportation plan extends all the way across the Thompson Lane. The portion adjacent to the church is already constructed, and the church did work with the city, although they didn't build it, they did work with us in being able to construct that portion of the road. The middle portion isn't constructed yet, so from Garrison over the river and railroad tracks to Northfield Boulevard isn't yet constructed, but if you think it's odd to have a street named West Northfield Boulevard here, and then of course what we know is West Northfield Boulevard, that help explains the difference in the name. So when you see this, you can see that to the south. And then the property that Vanderbilt is a part of and surrounding Vanderbilt is mostly a medical and office campus and have larger buildings. So this property isn't located near any single-family communities, and so having a taller building, staff didn't see that it would be uncharacteristic or not fit with the fabric of the area or disrupt the equilibrium that's been established. It would not be appropriate to request a height variance from the BZA because there's no way to meet the standards to give them a variance. So Mr. Aguilera recommended that they have a rezone application. I think the application to zone it commercial medical district probably came from Mr. Blomley. After looking at the chart, it was a commercial use that was most restrictive. Does that sound right, Mr. Blomley? And so it would allow the height they want, and it would allow the use by right, but it would not allow maybe what you might see in mixed use, which is multifamily or any type of industrial use or commercial highway district. So that sounds a little odd that they're asking for commercial medical zoning, but it's merely because it's the most restrictive commercial use that also allows them to do what they'd like to do. The future land use map identifies this area as public institutional. The use is not changing at all with the zoning, so it's not in conflict of our future land use map. I did include a chart of the uses permitted in that CM zone. We don't have a lot of it. Most of it is near the old hospital location downtown. You see either CM, CMRS 8, commercial medical, maybe where some residential buildings are used for offices. So with the CM district, the height of the building would go from 35 feet to 60 feet, so they could have a 60-foot maximum height. Both the RS-15 and the CM district allow ornamental towers on churches to go up to 70 feet, so that doesn't change either way. If you think of steeples or features that are part of traditional institutional group assemblies, they are taller than the structure, and so the single-family zone allows it, so does commercial medical. The big change is from 35 to 60 feet. They may need to amend their PSO based on the change to the design, because none of the buildings, of course, exceed the height limit now because they can't But because they will be changing the height, if approved, then they may come back for an amendment to the planned signage overlay district.
Can I stop right there? Because I'm really confused on this one little part.
Yeah.
So the CM district allows the maximum height of 60 feet. The RS-15, the maximum height is 35, except for churches in the RS-15 can have their ornamental tower be a maximum height of 70 feet. So it looks like they can go higher in the RS-15 than they can in the CM.
It's specific for an ornamental tower, not a functional space. So actually, their plans are to have a functional space be taller.
The actual space itself, not just
the actual space,
tower.
not just the tower.
I
But
see.
that 70 feet applies to CM and RS-15, RS-12, RS-10, RS-8, RS-6, RS-4, RS-A, D, 12, 16, RMO, CMRs,
whole
all
slew
those.
of them.
Yeah.
So you said it was non-conforming, so are they already over it?
They're not over it. They submitted plans wanting to
Plan
go
is to
over
go
it.
over it, okay.
And Mr. Aguilera, rightly so, flagged it and said it's not permitted.
Got it.
And I believe their site plan was approved subject to either them rezoning the property or modifying their building to meet the 35-foot maximum building height, if I'm not mistaken.
I looked, it was a conditional approval. It didn't go to planning commission though, did it?
No, it was an administrative site plan approval.
It's a pretty big ask though. Height is important. But we don't believe that a taller building would be out of character.
Okay, and so the taller building that they're, the whole cost for this is going to be, how tall?
Mr. Aguilera, how tall?
We knew you'd have to come up here, Mr. Aguilera. What you got for
I've got your
us?
comment sheets here, so if it's on there.
I just got caught up in that one sentence right there, and then I just couldn't get past it, sorry.
Yes, Madam Chair. So the building that they're looking at, the tower at least, was around, if I remember correctly from looking at the plan, was going to be around 40 feet, I think, 45, something around that. Margaret Ann really hit all the points, so I'm just going to piggyback off what she's already explained, and probably what Matthew Blomley probably can explain as well. The reason that they're doing this is not because this is an ornamental tower, but rather they actually plan to use this tower for their third floor purposes. So an ornamental tower, as you know, kind of it's already been explained, is more for design. This tower, again, would be more used for the purposes of the church, so they would need access to it. So during our site plan review, we discussed that requirement having to be at 35, but because they plan to use it and their requirements for ADA accessibility, they needed that extra height. So staff felt that this was a little bit more of a compromise into allowing them to do what they need, especially for future additions.
And ornamental towers, just like institutional group assembly is a fancy way of saying church, ornamental tower is a fancy way of saying steeple.
Right. Just the steeple is just got that. But so this is actually space that's going up that they'll have access to and use as meeting space or whatever. Okay. Building itself will be taller. Okay. So, Ms. Green, I interrupted you. You were continuing, and I had to stop and figure that out first. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Aguilera.
I'm glad you did. Thank you. The next thing that I wanted to ask from you was for you to schedule a public hearing for September 7th.
September 7th.
If you feel it's appropriate. Of course, you can push it out if you'd like to study anything further.
So this comment, I probably shouldn't even say it, but you mentioned that you weren't sure if commercial medical would be the appropriate zoning. I mean, that was what y'all came up with. I would argue that may be the best zoning, that it's a healing of souls at a church. So how more appropriate?
What are you looking at me for?
With that, what was the date? Oh, no, Warren's got it.
September 7th.
Just for clarification, so Are there any height restrictions related to, and I don't know, so that's why I'm asking the question, related to the battlefield the buildings?
Years ago, we had a Battlefield Protection Overlay District, BPO. In 2013, we removed the BPO overlay because the properties applied to were also properties located in the Gateway Design Overlay District, and the GDO was more restrictive than the Battlefield was. This property was not and is not in a Battlefield Protection Overlay District, and that would be the tool that we would use to implement height restrictions. The Battlefield may have an opinion on it, but I would say that the zoning Battlefield Protection Overlay District isn't a part of the zoning ordinance.
Make sure we were covering that anyway. Okay, thank you.
Good question. Good question.
I think, Mr. Russell, I think it would be appropriate for us to reach out to Battlefield Superintendent, and we'll be happy to do that to make sure they're aware of it. Because I know the notice will probably ping somewhere in Washington, D.C., so we'll make sure we get that to someone local here on the ground.
Okay.
Very good.
I'll make a motion, we set a public hearing on September the 7th.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, our item B is a zoning application for approximately 22 acres located at 1925 and 1927 Memorial Boulevard to be rezoned from RS-15 to PUD, 5.4 acres, and to amend the Adams Place PUD, 16.6 acres. Adams Place LLC is the applicant. Ms. Green.
Thank you very much. Our second item of new business is for you to consider scheduling a public hearing based on an application we've received for property owners for property located along the west side of Memorial Boulevard and north of Haynes Haven Lane. This property is the location of Adams Place, and on the map you can see there are two colors of the subject area. There's a very pretty blue that is currently zoned PUD, Planned Unit District. It was zoned PUD initially in 1994, and it became effective in 1995. And then there's a green area that's currently zoned RS-15. RS-15 is Single Family Residential District. The RS-15 property is actually several lots located within the Haynes Haven subdivision that are owned by the organization that owns Adam Place. I almost used the wrong acronym, so now I'm nervous. The property is surrounded by a single-family subdivision to the south and to the west. To the north is the Sprouts Commercial Shopping Center and a bank and some outparcels. Across Memorial Boulevard is the North Side Walmart, the city's airport, and some undeveloped commercial property. I think that most of us are aware of NHC's facility here in our community. It was a new concept in 1994, 1995. We have the benefit of time today, and so we know how it operates and the value it has in our community. When it was originally approved in 1994, it was approved with 4 phases, and the phases included a 40-bed nursing home, 84 assisted living units, 60 nursing home beds, 90 independent units, and then 90 more independent units. The NHC, who owns the property, did not build all those units, but they build most of them. So it currently operates an 89 apartment residential units, 23 memory care, and a 90-bed healthcare center with nursing and rehabilitation. When the rezoning initially went through, there was quite a bit of uncertainty surrounding it, and it was something that I was aware of even though I wasn't here at the time, and I did take time to review the files and the zoning that went through. The property was originally zoned multifamily and CH, and they rezoned it to PUD in, of course, 1995, and then subsequently amended that PUD. When the property went to Planning Commission City Council initially in 1995, there were some conditions of approval, and so I'll share those with you now and again later that were a part of this plan. Of course, it included 59 parking spaces as well, and the a landscape berm that was shown on the site plan at the time with a 40-foot setback from the back of curb. The PUD ordinance that was adopted in 1994 had 6 additional terms and provisions. They were, first, that the 5 residential lots fronting along Haynes Haven remain residential, that they allow 1 access road on Lot 3 from Haynes Haven Lane to this development, and that this road be gated and only residents with cards have access. That includes no staff having access. The third was that a traffic light be installed at the major entrance to this development across from Airport Road. It is to be installed by the developer, subject to TDOT's approval. The fourth was that landscaping and buffering shown on the preliminary diagram on the RS-15 lots be required. The fifth is that the service entrance off of Memorial Boulevard will be used for all service vehicles and construction traffic, so no construction traffic on Haynes Haven. And that they allow no more than 25 parking spaces on Lot 4 only if Phase 4 is developed. And so when I reviewed the minutes and the discussions from then, I think Mr. LaRoche presented it from NHC. They agreed to all those commitments, and then the Planning Commission made no interpretation of any restrictive covenants at that time. It's important because it was in the notes. In 1999, there was an amendment to the PUD, and it was specifically regarding the gated entrance to Haynes Haven. The gate broke, stopped working, residents complained, and it took a while to get the parts and get fixed. Staff brought an application to Planning Commission City Council to remove the restriction that they couldn't use Haynes Haven Lane, since at that time the site was built. There was an understanding that let's see. At that time, the Planning Commission determined that this developed a model of a land type that was appropriate near low-impact areas, and that the traffic was really less than what was anticipated. Because of that, the planning director recommended removing that restriction. It was not removed entirely. It was amended. That condition was amended to that the access drive from Haynes Haven be gated and that only residents have it, and that they could allow caregivers and family members a card. So they actually loosened the restriction on the gate on Haynes. Today they're coming to you because they would like to amend the PUD section of the plan and rezone those 5 single-family lots to PUD. The part of what they're presenting to you is that they haven't built all the units they were initially approved for. However, since it was very specific, the conditions of approval, I did have them note the changes to the zoning ordinance that they're asking for and those previous conditions that would need to change for this approval. So they're actually proposing to put more apartment units here. There are 2 different styles. One looks a lot like a traditional apartment complex, several stories, and then the others look like, I don't know, maybe like they're 2 stories, but more residential, like a townhouse. None of them are for sale. They are all a rental model, but they are proposing to put these in the RS-15 portion of the property. And so we, as staff, are proceeding with caution because we know that there's a lot of involvement here. The applicants did have a neighborhood meeting. Surprisingly, the residents of the facility, I think, outnumbered anybody there. And one of the things I was proud of them for is participating, knowing their rights as citizens and participating in the process and asking questions and demanding more from staff, demanding more from the applicants. And I think you'll see that they're continuing to work with them. And of course, we have several representatives of the applicant here. The change with this PUD would allow 53 additional multifamily residential units with the three apartment style structures, and then allow that RS-15 property to be used. So that alters the landscaping and berming on Haynes Haven. They also have expressed a desire to diversify the type of resident they have at Adams Place. They believe that this style that they're proposing will be attractive to people who are 55 and up. And that when I read in the old materials, the original model was geared toward 65 and up, and so they're looking at diversifying the ages that live here. And so I've also talked about the architecture. The architects here are going to present it to you, wanting to make sure that they do have a thematic consistency through the campus, although these are more modern structures, still implementing the same colors and materials there. One of the important things to note in the process is the streetscape along Haynes Haven Lane. With this PUD, it would be different than as is operated. The applicants are requesting a 50% reduction in the setback along Haynes Haven Lane. Right now, under our zoning ordinance and under the conditions, they're required to be at least 40 feet back, and so they're actually wanting to only be 20 feet from Haynes Haven. To offset that incompatible setback, they're proposing to do a 2-foot berm along the street. It's a little different because the site will sit lower than the street. The street's a little bit taller, and so ultimately this berm will be 2 feet. I did share the plans, and the planning director shared the plans with Mr. Barbie to review the landscaping. He recommends that the berm be 3 feet, measured from the elevation at the right-of-way to help block headlights from encroaching into the residential units and to break the berm into several sections to allow for proper drainage. And then there were some materials that were proposed to be added. Of course, Memorial Boulevard is a state highway, and TDOT regulates that. A signal already exists at the main entrance, and the Haynes Haven Lane street is not proposed to be signalized, and we don't believe that this change will be enough to trigger that change to have a signal so close to another one. The site design does look like it accommodates emergency service personnel and fire and unit numbering and those sorts of elements. So our zoning ordinance says with planned developments that you should identify the exceptions to the zoning ordinance that you might need, and they've identified 3. One is to reduce the minimum required front building setback from Haynes Haven from 40 feet to 20 feet. The second is to reduce the required parking. I think sometimes we hear that as part of a lot of PUDs, but in this case, I think that they have some numbers from their facility that they would like to help show you that they can provide less parking. Currently, our zoning ordinance requires 1.5 spaces for 1-bedrooms and 2.2 for 2 bedrooms. They would like to provide 1 space per bedroom, so that is a reduction. And then to increase the maximum building height by 6 feet and 6 inches. I do think that's from the zoning ordinance. I think it's important to note the exceptions from the conditions of approval initially. And they are, one of those conditions was to allow the 5 residential lots along fronting Haynes Haven to be developed. It was specific then that it could not be, and so now that's a change, and so I wanted to call that out as an exception. The other is to modify the language regarding landscaping and buffering along the RS-15 lots as approved with the original PUD. And the third is to remove the requirement that allows no more than 25% parking spaces on Lot 4, because Lot 4 is a part of the RS-15. One of the benefits that we have today that we didn't have in 1995 is this facility existing. I think initially there was a lot of unknowns and uncertainties with it. We have lived with it in our community for quite some time. I think it's something that we're proud of, and so understanding there were conditions placed on it was initially approved, but we have the lens of today to look at, and so when you review this amendment, we would ask you to consider those restrictions placed on it, but determine if you think maybe they should be different based on the type of land use it is. And from a planning perspective, it seems to be a low impact use and a good buffer between airport and a major arterial and the streets, but it does change an existing equilibrium that has been established along Haynes Haven. But I did include the original ordinances if you needed to see them, or the book is of course in the packet, but Mr. Clyde Roundtree is representing them, but they also have the architect who, the packet you have has some architectural renderings. They've changed a little bit based on the relationship with those residents. They've asked for some changes, and so they're going to pass out the changes to the architecture for you to consider. We would ask that you schedule a public hearing, and it seems that we have room on our agenda for the September 7th. But prior to them coming up to continue the presentation, do you have any questions from me?
I do. So, if I heard you correctly, whatever was approved in '94, they had the ability to build more units. Am I correct in saying that?
You're correct. They had the ability to build more units.
But their site plan would not allow them to build any of these additional units in these 4 or 5 lot parcels that are on Haynes Haven. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
It was, that density was prohibited along those RS-15 properties.
So I guess my question, and maybe the applicant can answer this, so where did the land go that was, what's changed about where this could be placed with respects to the number of units, or is it just based upon this is a whole different deal in reference to it's not assisted living, it's not long-term care? You follow me what I'm asking? Okay.
I'll have them talk about what's changed. I think ultimately the building capacities don't hold as many, I think that's the short answer of it. The buildings that they built don't hold as many units as they could have done, and so that's really where they ended up, but they may be more equipped to give you more details.
Any other questions for Ms. Green before we hear from, we're going to hear from the applicant?
Yes, they're both here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Roundtree?
Clyde Roundtree, Hudson Steel Engineering. Thank you for the opportunity to walk you through the request for Adams Place. I'd like to thank Margaret Ann for that background. That's pretty interesting. It's kind of neat. I do want to say this before I get started. Just I appreciate y'all. I've been to a lot of planning commission meetings in different counties lately, and they've all been at the change of tenure, and it's been pretty emotional to watch people kind of move out of that tenure of their life. And one of the people in the meeting requested that every teenager serve on some kind of council upon graduation from high school. And I thought that would be an awesome requirement. So I think 2 years military service, 1 year public service, and will be better as a culture. So with that in mind, I am representing Adams Place, who's a long-standing institution here in Murfreesboro, and as such, I think it's been neat to kind of, it's a privilege to work with them, first off, but it's also been probably more scrutinized than a lot of things we work on, just because it has a really strong sense of place and a real strong reputation in the community. I'm also here with Mr. Andy Clark, who is the representative for Adams Place, if you have any specific questions, but right now we know it's kind of high level, and Keaton Pettit's here as well for to discuss the architecture. I would just like to walk through the site plan primarily. Most of us are, familiar with the location. Margaret Ann did a great job in the background. As far as the context, there are single-family residences on both the southern side as well as the western side, which we're trying to be sensitive to. I won't fly through all the existing conditions here. So the site plan, Adams Place is responding to a need that they have within their community, and also a need that Murfreesboro has within our greater community, and that is for more opportunities for senior living. This will be an independent living facility, really kind of the highest level of independent living, but it also fulfills their mission really for age-in-place type of living. So this provides Adams Place, as Margaret Ann mentioned, kind of extends their target market of people that can actually live in this location. Could drop down at age to 55, but of all the facilities at Adams Place, this will be by far the most independent living component of the facility. As Margaret Ann mentioned, we are proposing 3 kind of apartment-style buildings. That one will face Memorial, one will face their existing driveway, and one will face Haynes Haven Lane. And it's important, and I'll just give credit to Matthew. Matthew said, man, just don't change the way it looks from Memorial. Keep all that existing landscaping. So that was a driving factor. Making sure Memorial, the way it looks from Memorial, we're doing our best to kind of preserve that look, because it is really beautiful in character. And then really from the client's perspective and from the resident's perspective, don't change the way it looks when you drive in, as far as trying to keep as much of that existing tree canopy, trying to keep that character as well. So that those 2 equations kind of drove us a little bit tighter to the Hayneshaven Lane side to respect the existing driveway, to respect the view on Memorial. So that was kind of major components that kind of helped us with placing the buildings. As you can see from the site plan, the buildings kind of create a courtyard. You know, the three kind of, all those buildings will have an outside face. So the front of the buildings will be facing the public right-of-ways and the main driveway. So it'll have a little bit more of an internal, a lot of your circulation. So from a public right-of-way standpoint, you won't see the cars, you won't see the parking garage, you won't see the carports. We really wanted to kind of keep that exterior really having that strong appeal from a visual standpoint, and to minimize the amount of activity. Right now, Adams Place, you don't really see a lot of movement, from Memorial as far as how the campus is living. So we wanted to stay consistent there. The other component that was brought in are there's 4 buildings that are basically along the further to the west along Hayneshaven Lane. Those are really townhome buildings. And so those folks would be basically living in townhomes as an option. There'll be 8 of those, and those are, again, another level of independent living. But the goal would be is that they can move to Adams Place in their 50s, they can stay there for the rest of their life. So it just opens that opportunity. I know I've gone through several products and home zoning cases where we started really considering senior living, age-targeted living. We've looked at senior kind of apartments, and I know it's something we're wrestling with because, again, the name apartment's not a good word in Murfreesboro, and we're kind of looking at something that has that kind of character. However, in this situation, it's providing a need that we feel like can really be filled and help Adams Place fulfill their vision for long-term living. The other component that wasn't really mentioned, but I think is a major component, is an amenity building as well. If you look at where it says indoor pool, which is on the top left of that image, there's actually an indoor pool area at Adams Place. This will be an amenity center building that's separate from that. There'll be some courtyard areas that kind of define the space between the new building and the existing structure. There'll also be a green space. I'll have a walking trail around it. And we're excited about this because, candidly, where the most resistance came from was not Hayneshaven Lane. No one showed up from Hayneshaven Lane, but plenty of people showed up inside the building. And their concern was this is a big change for them. We feel like it is a good thing long term for the whole community, but in any situation, they're going to be the greatest impact, those who live there now currently. And so as part of that clarification with those residents, we said, this is a change, and we understand that, but it's also could benefit you. The biggest benefit's going to be the amenity area. It's something they don't have now currently. I think this is going to pull the community outside a lot more. There's more walking trails. It's more walkable. But that amenity area will give them all kinds of opportunities for indoor-outdoor type exercise opportunities. Future, we'd like to open up the pool area and give it a retractable door so it becomes more of an indoor-outdoor space as well. So our goal overall is to enhance the community. Even though we're adding more units and it's a change of their perspective, we really want to enhance the overall community and the way it lives. With that in mind, Keaton, if you'd come up and walk through the architecture, and we'll answer any questions you may have.
Made some updates. I think it's been incorporated with the I'm Keaton Pettit, and I'm with Johnson & Bailey Architects, and we've had the privilege of working on the Adams Place campus since its inception. And we're excited about this new type of living proposed for the campus, and as such, we've tried to develop an architecture that is more up to date and will definitely fit more in this 55-plus market that we're targeting. But we also wanted to be respectful and complementary to the existing campus that's already established. So we have proposed buildings that really relate to the campus in several ways. We've proposed using the same materials that are already there, using the same red brick that exists on campus, incorporating a lot of the stone elements that are found throughout campus, including stone bands, keystones over window elements, stone lintels. We've also really, I'm gonna move from this amenity center to the 3-story active living buildings. We've really tried to pull the arch element that is really prominent throughout the existing campus, but give it an updated flavor and with this large arched entry element at the apartment-style buildings. And then we've also tried to incorporate some new contemporary elements, including some board and batten siding, these small areas of white you see throughout these elevations. And we had previously developed, which is why I'm handing out a new set of elevations today, we had previously developed a scheme that was more contemporary than this, that incorporated another brick color, a light kind of buff shade of brick that we thought would look really nice on this new style of living. But we got some really strong feedback at the neighborhood meeting from the residents about how this building didn't look anything like what's on campus, and they're really invested in what they have there and really appreciate the architecture that's there. So we felt it was important to try to respond to that, and we decided to take out that second color of brick and just go with one tone of brick to match the existing architecture. And we also tried to really respond to the city's design guidelines by incorporating a lot of vertical elements to emphasize the verticality of the facades, and also breaking the plane on all these facades so that you have a lot of alcoves and projections, and it's not one flat plane. And we've also, since our three-story apartment living buildings really have two facades. They have the entry facade that the residents will experience, but they also have the rear facade that faces Memorial, Haynes Haven, and the entry drive of Adams Place. So we've really tried to emulate that same feel of a front of a building, even though it's not the front of the building, with a large arched entry style element and high articulation of the facades. And we also are going to incorporate the same roof material, same shingles as are on all the existing buildings on campus, along with some standing seam metal roof accents that are there as well. So I'm happy to answer any other questions.
So I'm not sure this is a architectural question, but on this handout you gave us, page 15, it says attached single-family front elevations. So are these, is this a two-unit building?
They're two-unit buildings. The initial concept was townhomes. Yeah. And then we started to realize as we developed the floor plans that the quality of interior space wasn't great when you had home right next to sharing walls with each other. So we decided to kind of break those 4 townhome units apart into two-unit buildings. And we have a total of 4 two-unit buildings now, but that allowed us to get more windows and more light into those.
So are they sharing one garage? I guess I'm getting a little confused. So is this a two-unit building?
Yes, but they're front to back. The entries are opposite sides of each other. It's kind of confusing without floor plans of the actual building.
Okay. So somehow you're going to get to the rear of the. Okay. So there's 2 garages.
There's 2 garages. Each unit has a garage, but they're arranged so that for more privacy, it's almost a front to back arrangement.
Yeah, I get it now.
It kind of zigzags across the floor plan.
Okay. And then I don't know if this is appropriate question for you or not, but I'll ask it. So we keep saying age 55 and up. So is it age restricted? Can you do that?
That is the goal within the guidelines of the Fair Housing Act.
Okay.
There are options for 55 plus.
Okay.
Other questions? It all looks really, really good. On the apartment buildings that'll be facing, each of the 3, the frontage side on each of the streets. And I'm not even good at this part, but is it trying to be, I don't feel like it's the same kind of wow look that you see when you see the entrance to Adams Place. It's a very nice looking, but I don't know if it's just, I don't know if it's the columns, I don't know if it's I don't know what the difference is. Just doesn't seem quite like that kind of almost majestic look you get.
Yeah, I think part of that was, Adams Place as it is, especially the independent living building, it's very formal, and I think that appeals to that demographic of their target market there, and we were trying to do something a little more contemporary and a little more residential feeling, because this is really a transition from maybe a single-family home on a nice-sized lot to an easier style of living where there's a lot less maintenance. But we thought it was important to kind of have a strong residential feel still to it, less formal, more residential.
Right.
And on page, 17, we tried to compare and contrast some of the existing architectural elements from the campus with some new proposed details where we were really trying to pull from the character. It's not an exact replication, but we're trying to utilize a lot of the same architectural features and elements.
And it may be just the actual roof line. I don't know, it seems like
It just feels more like an apartment building.
just what do you call the peak there? The little trim that is on the peak proportionally doesn't look. But I am so far from being anything architectural, so, all I can do is kind of say what seems to maybe, and your creative ideas have to
Sure, we're
take
happy
that
to
and
take
run with
any feedback and make adjustments as necessary.
This is just a comment before the public hearing. So I've gotten a lot of calls on this from the residents.
Oh, yeah.
And in emails, which, I hate to say this, I kind of find odd. So I'm just curious what other communications you've had with some of these residents in the last 2 weeks or the last 3 weeks. I don't know if you're willing to answer that question or not, but.
I'm going to let Terry take this.
Hi, I'm Terry Deal. I'm the Executive Director of Adams Place Residential Living. So my residents are very vested in everything that goes on our campus, and as you have found out, they are very vocal. They want to make sure that their voices are being heard, and that's one of the most important things to all of us as we've been going through this process. So comments in-house have died down just a little bit. We did host a resident meeting prior to the first community meeting that was hosted, because it was very important to us that our residents found out from us what we were proposing instead of hearing about it on the street. So we went to them and presented it to them and gave them opportunity to ask questions. My residents are, they're known for emails, letters, calls, and each one of those forms of communication really gives us a better insight as to what they want. So I don't know what you all are receiving, but what I'm receiving, a lot of their concerns are around general construction issues, the noise, the dust, the disruption to our normal lives. Some of the other things that they have communicated with me is how are these additional residents going to be impacting our lives? Are they going to be coming into the independent living or into the residential living building and occupying our spaces? And the answers to that are no, they're not. They're going to have their own areas. The amenity center is very intentionally designed to bring those groups of people together. I don't remember which one it was that mentioned this, but the goal of the addition of this unit is to become, if you will, the last phase of reaching the senior population, 55 and over. So it is the first step from I'm giving up my house, I'm getting into a community setting where I can just age in place. So the goal behind the amenity center is to draw the populations together. One comment that has been made by residents is it, or one question, is it your intention that the residents of the new property will eventually live in residential living? I said, absolutely, that is the intention, just like it is the intention for the residential living residents to graduate, if you will, into the assisted living or beyond as those needs change. So we want it to be just a continuation of the community effect. The new residents in the active senior living communities will not invade, if you will, the spaces of residential living, but they will certainly be incorporated into the campus. Those are the primary comments that seem to be coming to me right now. One of the concerns that had been expressed early on was how well these buildings work with the rest of our campus. And Keaton and his team have done an outstanding job to make modifications. We take to heart what our residents bring to us, and we make adaptations as we can. So we're listening to what their needs are, and we're addressing those needs as best we can so that we can make sure that these the additional buildings do truly represent all that Adams Place currently represents to this community. I hope that answer. It was very long, but I hope it answered your question.
It does. I think it is a wonderful project, and it makes all the sense in the world from a transitioning perspective, being that I'm at that age myself.
Me too.
I didn't get it. I mean, in simple terms, in reference to the pushback. So, anyway, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's the first I heard of it was the residents, a couple of them called me the day after y'all's meeting you had there. And I was like, oh. And they were like, it's at Planning Commission. They were at our Planning Commission meeting the next day, which was like 2 months ago. And I said, it's not on our agenda yet. You know, I'm sure you'll know about it when it is. And but the construction, I think, was their biggest concern. And they don't want to, don't have a lot of years left and worried about listening to that for, whatever remaining years they have.
Right.
So, all legitimate concerns, but true with any construction project. And maybe we can just encourage them to leave their hearing aids out a little bit longer when they go to bed or when they wake up the next morning.
And I will say this, we do have a couple of extenuating circumstances with residents who the construction will truly affect them, and I have gone to them personally and made offers to allow them to transition to other apartments on the north side of the building. They've been very receptive to that. And now that they know they have that option, there's only 2 that fall in that category. And knowing that they have that option, they are fully supportive of the project now.
Good. And I can only say that because I've just been through it for 12 years, so I know what getting those hearing aids in every morning, how important that is. So,
thank you.
But thank you, Terry. What other questions? Ready for a motion for a public hearing? And September 7th is...
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all very much. Our next item will be a zoning application for approximately 116.7 acres located along Burnt Knob Road, Blackman Road, and Vaughn Road to be rezoned from P Park to CH and GDO1. The City of Murfreesboro Administration Department is the applicant. Ms. Rush, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Y'all have a lot of stamina. give you credit. Let's see if I can find, oh, there's a lot of things open. Let's go to this. Getting almost there. There we go. Good afternoon. So this is a city property that's located along the north side of Interstate 840, contiguous with Burnt Knob Road, Vaughn Road, and it's just east of the Veterans Parkway interchange. The applicant is the City Administration Department, and the request is to rezone the property from P, which is Park Zoning District, to CH with a GDO overlay. The background for this is on June 23rd, the City Council voted to approve an exchange of land with Middle Tennessee Electric of this subject property, which is 116 acres, with the MTE property located about a mile south of here. It's 149 acres. It's located along Veterans Parkway. This site, the city-owned property, is highly visible from Interstate 840, which makes it well-suited for corporate headquarters and other future business development, and less suited for a city park, primarily due to the lack of residents that are city residents in the vicinity, whereas the MTE property is surrounded by city residential developments. The purpose of the rezoning is for the proposed CH and GDO1 would be to allow for business development opportunities to be established. The Gateway Development Overlay Zone will help ensure that the development is of a higher quality, both for the site and for building architecture, and also helps to regulate some of the uses that can be established there. The GDO1 is consistent with other properties in this vicinity that are also recently been added with a GDO overlay, including the properties to the west, as well as the CH property south of Interstate 840, and West Lawn PUD south of 840 and the Veterans Interchange to the west also has gateway design criteria within that program book. There will be a community outreach meeting scheduled for August 30th at Fire Station Number 11 at 5:30 p.m. That information is being sent out to neighbors in the vicinity, and it'll be jointly held with the city administration as well as with MTE there to represent the two projects. The adjacent zoning to this property, as shown as on the map, is primarily CH with the GDO over one combining district on all those areas. The future land use map for this site does depict it as, the current one depicts it as business office park, and then the proposed future land use map that staff's been working on depicts this as employment generating. So in both the future land use map and the one that we've been working on does recognize that this is a site that would be more appropriate for business types of development. Staff is recommending the rezoning because it is consistent with the vision in the future land use map, as well as it's consistent with the zoning of the adjacent properties, and the GDO1 will help ensure quality design and site planning. What we're asking from you today is to schedule this for a public hearing, and staff is asking for September 7th for that date. I'm happy to answer any questions, and it looks like the highest ranking member of our planning department is Mr. Blomley, can answer anything that I don't happen to know.
Questions?
I'll make a comment. I think these two public hearings will be very well attended from past experience with these two pieces of property.
Second.
And Mr. Wright, one of the things that that Mr. Huddleston wanted to be very proactive about was scheduling that neighborhood meeting in advance of any public hearing that we had at the Planning Commission. And we sent out the notices for that community outreach meeting on Monday, so folks should be getting those today if they haven't gotten them already. And it's for both properties. City staff and Middle Tennessee Electric are going to be there, ready to explain the zoning request and field questions to helpfully educate the neighbors prior to it going to a public hearing at Planning Commission, educate them on what the proposed zoning request means.
And what was the date of that meeting?
August 30th. It's a Tuesday. It'll be at 5:30 p.m. at Fire Station Number 11 on Blaze Drive. The fire department's gonna take the fire trucks out of the bays, park those on site, help guide parking opportunities there for folks to make sure we can accommodate all the guests. As you're right, and we do expect to have a huge turnout at that meeting.
So you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. And this kind of goes for well, you're not there yet, but so is anyone here going to be able to make any sort of assurance to the people that will be here in attendance that D will happen, that it will develop as a park?
We already have plans for it as a park too.
So can that be a public announcement that is going to happen, or you're not there yet?
Mr. Halliburton, I would just say that on the next item that Ms. Rush is going to go over, when we're putting the zoning in place to enable that, no plans have been finalized as far as programming for that park at this point. But what we're trying to do is get the zoning in place in a location that we feel is better positioned.
I agree. I think that the impression's going to be it's a bait and switch. You had planned this park here, and now you're going to say you're going to do it here, and then when is that going to happen? I'm just talking out loud here.
The council's allotted money for a West Side Park now, so the money's there.
Okay.
There was some ED money that we're going to use for a West Side Park and some CIP money. So there's money to put a West Side Park in place.
Okay.
Now, it may not be the West Side Park that they hoped and desired for, but the idea of a West Side Park is there. But there's no, like Matthew said, there's no plans.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Halliburton, I don't think anybody can promise that it will happen. It takes time to put the plans together, and while council has certainly indicated that they're looking to do that, until council actually passes the motion and allocates the money and says, yes, we're going to approve this plan, I think it looks to me, and I understand some people are going to probably be suspicious, and we'll just have to deal with that.
Right.
But there's certainly a movement toward doing that, and I think that the pretty clear today's intention. But time passes and things happen, and I don't know that we can guarantee it. But I think it looks like that's where we're going. I think that's where everybody's is headed today.
Yeah, eat your Wheaties this night.
Thank you.
And bring your coffee.
Yeah, bring your coffee. Couple Red Bulls.
So did we set the public hearing?
Nope.
I'll make a motion that we set a public hearing for September 7th.
Second.
All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now, the zoning application for approximately 149 acres located along Veterans Parkway to be rezoned from PCD to CH and GDO1, approximately 26.5 acres, CF, approximately 30.5 acres, and P, approximately 92 acres. City of Murfreesboro Administration Department is the applicant. Ms. Rush.
Thank you. So this is the companion rezoning. It is the MT property that's located along the east side of Veterans Parkway, and it's about 1 mile south of the city property that we just talked about. Again, the applicant is the City Administration Department, and the request is as stated in the title, from PCD to Park, CF, and CH with the GDO1 overlay, as noted in the map that's depicted on the screen. MT had planned to develop this site as a future headquarters, and the planned commercial district was developed and set forth a specific plan for that development. It included offices as well as outdoor and indoor storage, and it was presented and approved by the City Council several years ago. As I said it before, on June 23rd, the City Council voted to approve an exchange of land with Middle Tennessee Electric of this property with the city-owned property of 116 acres, this one being 149 acres. And as you can see by the aerial, that there are a lot of residential lots surrounding this particular area. The purpose of the proposed park zoning would be to allow for the development of a public park, and the proposed CF and CH zoning would allow for other public facilities. The exact nature and character of the future uses, as we just discussed, will be determined by the City Council through our CIP process. So that's when it'll be determined and allocated at that point. The adjacent zoning to this park site, or to this property, is RS10, RS12, and RS15, and PRD to the north and northeast. To the east is Overall Creek, and east of the creek is RS12 zoning and RS15 zoning. To the south are property zoned PRD, and to the west are property zoned RM, which are single-family residents in the county. The future land use map shows this as public institutional, and the one that the city's currently working on, the proposed future land use map, also shows this as public institutional. So the rezoning that's proposed is consistent with the future land use map. Staff is recommending the rezoning of these because the P zoning will allow for the development of city facilities, including parks or similar uses. The P zoning is contiguous to the residential portion, as you can see in the map. And the CF and CH, or the GDO1, would allow for also public types of facilities, but those areas are not contiguous to any of the residents. They're more internal and then along the frontage of Veterans Parkway. The CF zoning is traditional. It's a transitional zoning district that we often use that provides somewhat of a buffer between the residential and other zoning districts because the uses are more limited, and there's also additional development standards. So you do see that that is a way that it transitions to the higher CH zoning district. Again, staff is asking for this to be scheduled for a public hearing. We are requesting September 7th, and it does seem like it's going to be a long agenda, so I think Matthew and Greg will work hard to figure out placement of all these different items and how it will go.
And we'll try to make sure you have a meal before the meeting that will make you extra sleepy. That
Fried chicken.
Make a motion, we set up public hearing on September 7th.
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next, we have a mandatory referral and right-of-way abandonment to consider the abandonment of the rights-of-way of Marietta Street and Ruth Avenue. Joe Swanson Jr. is the applicant. Ms. Smith.
Good afternoon again, Commission. This particular item we are looking at is located off of Old Salem Road and Park Avenue, as shown in the depiction above. The existing remainder of Marietta Street, you'll notice, has a small jog in it as you get towards the southerly portion of the site, but it contains approximately 280 feet of length from Old Salem Road to the furthest most interior, and then Ruth Avenue at this location is about 82 feet coming into that area. As stated in the staff report and included on the exhibit shown above, last month you approved a preliminary plat to kind of reconfigure 3 existing parcels into 2 parcels, whereas it consolidated this smaller parcel that currently accesses only Ruth Avenue with this larger parcel, which is generally tied to 800 Park Avenue. And then this parcel up towards the frontage, it's looking at gaining this portion of the area from that green lot to the south, as well as extending this portion of their lot back and closer towards the cell tower. As part of that consideration, if it moved forward the way that it is, Murrieta Street at this location would have to dedicate some additional right-of-way. But as the staff was looking at this project and some other projects, and you can see here, is it's not really being used as a city street currently. Some areas are down to 12 feet of pavement. Trees are overgrowing some of the sites, so we looked at allowing the opportunity to apply for an abandonment. And so we had received that letter to consider abandonment, and the applicant, depending on what the outcome of that, would like to or would be willing to take on any and all maintenance of those areas if it were consolidated with their lot. But again, that's going to take completing the process and getting all of our comments back from other departments. We do understand that there is a water line that is in a portion of the easement in this upper section, and currently when they did abandon a portion of this Murrieta Street here, they did retain a water easement in that location. We also do understand Middle Tennessee Electric has some facilities in that location as well. When you look at the aerial on this site, and it's hard to see from this one, but if you're on GIS, the entire site to the south is pretty much access for trucks. And it's hard concrete surface throughout, and it's only when we hit those areas that the city right-of-way is that we get to a pulverized gravel surface that we're looking at. Staff believes that there are some opportunities here that can help better configure and maintain these areas because it is not functioning, and it is definitely considered a city substandard street in that it doesn't have the adequate right-of-way, no curbs, no gutter, no sidewalk, definitely does not have surfacing that meets any of our city street standards as well. So the subdivision goes back to about 1928. Thank you, Mr. Ives, for pulling that old map. And a lot of this area, actually, Murrieta Street went further, Ruth Avenue went far further, and there were 2 other streets. All of those streets have been abandoned in some way, shape, or form over the years as development has occurred. And the reason why I think it's left in kind of the condition it is because those lots were very small and narrow originally. Most of them were 20 by 120, which might have worked in 1928, definitely does not work for industrial type properties today. And then the site is surrounded by some legal non-conforming residential uses that still remain here on Old Salem Road, but again, most of it is industrial on all sides of the project. So with that, we are continuing to work through comments from all of the various entities that we work with, and we believe that we would be ready for a public hearing to be set for September 7th. It may not be as long as some of those other items that I know will be much longer, and mandatory referrals are usually last on the agenda. So I will be here till whatever time we need to consider it if you set it for November. September the 7th is what we're requesting today.
You want November?
I think December 7th, November.
think Mr. Swanson would prefer September.
I was going to say. Mhm. Okay, any questions before we?
If there are none, I move for approval. Schedule a public hearing on September 7th.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you. Moving on to staff reports and other business, we have two more mandatory referrals. These are first one is to consider the acquisition of property located along Secretariat Trace in the Evergreen Farm subdivision. City of Murfreesboro Administration Department is the applicant. Mr. Blomley.
Yeah, and I'm going to go over to the podium so I can control the exhibits.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission members. This mandatory referral is for a portion of the Evergreen Farms development tract. Back in 2004, the Evergreen Farms plan development was approved for the balance of the property heading west of St. Andrews Drive over west of Puckett Creek. And back about 5 years ago, Old South submitted a plan development amendment for the portion that is west of Puckett Creek. So it's the area here, and they've made quite a bit of progress in developing west of Puckett Creek since that plan development amendment was approved back in 2017, or 2016 rather. In 2017, the city purchased property here with the intentions of using it as a neighborhood park. After the city purchased that property and was able to look at Old South's plans, it appeared to be an opportunity to increase the size and make that a more robust neighborhood park area. And so we've been working with Old South the last several years to acquire that property, or to just discuss the acquisition of that property, and that's something that Old South is amenable to. The amenities that Old South promised in their plan development package would still be on that property, but with the city's control, it would give us the opportunity to combine it with the property to the north for additional amenities for the area. And this particular property is really well positioned to serve thousands of people with, not only with the adjacent Evergreen Farms, St. Andrews Place subdivisions, but you look to the west, this section of Evergreen Farms will actually connect to the existing city subdivisions. There will be a connection to Rucker Lane where there are the existing city subdivisions, Marymount Springs, Kingdom Ridge, so on and so forth. Scottish Glen is another one. So what we've talked to Old South about is to acquire all of the area in the red. So it's basically that area that was to be used for their amenities, which was going to have a playground, a pavilion, and a parking area, as well as what's in the floodway of Puckett Creek all the way down to Perlino Drive, which is the main street through that section of Evergreen Farms that crosses over Puckett Creek. That will give the city an opportunity to incorporate a trail system along the creek. I think we've identified a potential of about a half-mile trail that could be constructed. But really, other than the potential of a trail and the playground and pavilion that the city will be working with Old South on, nothing's really been programmed. But adding this will increase the opportunity for the city to do something meaningful with that property. I think that Nate and Angela have been talking about having something be kind of nature-focused there, but to give people kind of a little bit of an oasis in the middle of all those subdivisions. And so this mandatory referral is to recommend that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the acquisition of this property from Old South. And really the benefit to Old South and to the Evergreen Farms neighborhood is that they will maintain the same amenities that they were promised in the zoning package, but the homeowners association will not undertake the cost of maintenance of those amenities. The city will undertake that as a municipal recreational facility. I'll be happy to answer any questions. As I mentioned, we recommend that you recommend approval of this acquisition to the city council.
Okay. Any questions?
Does Old South still pay for the planned programming they have in their plan book already?
Mr. Ives, do you know how that cost breakdown?
It's my understanding that Old South will build out that the playground area and the amenity center. That's planned. They will build it, and then as it's currently discussed, that we would take it over.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the acquisition of the property.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Mr. Plumley.
Thank you.
Next item is mandatory referral to consider granting easements to Atmos Gas for relocation of gas lines in connection with the Thompson Lane widening project, Murfreesboro.
Can you control this for me, Matthew? Sure. Okay. Thompson Lane is going to be rebuilt by the state of Tennessee. They are still in the right-of-way acquisition process. That, of course, requires some utilities to be moved, and Atmos needs to acquire small easements from the city on 3 properties. The first one you see there is on Fire Station 7, I believe. They're at Blanton Drive and in Thompson. The next one is a small across the corner of the Siegel Elementary School. And the third one is longer but fairly narrow, and it's across our trailhead. Water Sewer has looked at these, and as of others, and we don't see any conflict with what Atmos needs to do, no conflict with any of our other utilities. And so we would recommend that you approve this, recommend to council the donation of these easements to Atmos to further the improvements to Thompson Lane.
Okay, any questions?
I'll make a motion, since everybody's so talkative, to grant the easement to
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, state aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Sorry, Ken, thank you for that.
Any other staff reports or any other business?
I have nothing else.
Okay, we stand adjourned.